Okay, thank you very much, and welcome to the January 2022 board meeting of LPEA. I want to go ahead and call the meeting to order. Before we go any further, I think we have an amendment to the agenda. Go ahead, Ted.
Yeah, John. So in section 5C, I had a few weeks ago, before the agenda was published, I had requested that we put a topic on there for some Roundup governance discussion. That's no longer necessary. So I'd like to have that removed from the agenda. And then secondarily, I'm aware from Graham that there's a real estate matter that should be discussed in executive session. So I guess I would go ahead and move that we remove the Roundup discussion and then also add a real estate discussion to our executive session.
Perfect.
I'll second it.
Great. Thank you. All in favor of those changes to the agenda? Is
just to be clear, it's section 5E that we're removing, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so all in favor of the adjustment to the agenda, hold your hand up, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Great. Thank you. All abstained? Excellent. Thank you. We're going to go on to the next item here, to open up the floor for public comments. I wanted to do two things before we do that. I wanted to take a brief moment, and I think I speak on behalf of the entire board to take a moment to acknowledge all the guys, all the men and women who are out working the storm last month. That is dangerous work and hard work and late night work, and we are all really grateful for everything that you guys did. That was an extremely challenging situation, and an awful lot of overtime went in to making sure that our membership were safe. So really, on behalf of the entire board, thank you for all of that work. We're grateful for you guys. And then before we go further, I'm sorry, we also want to, I'm going to ask you guys if you would all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great, thank you. Great, I appreciate that. And then before we go on to the comments, the second thing that I wanted to do was ask Graham to revisit the general rules for public comment, so that we're all clear on what the ground rules are for public commentary. Why don't you go ahead, Graham?
All right, so the board encourages comments about the cooperative from its members. The board asks that each participant's comment pertain to cooperative business. Please remember that the board may not discuss or act upon any issues that are not posted on our agenda. The board will hear the public comments, but will not respond except perhaps to ask questions. Matters brought forth that require a response will be referred to cooperative staff as appropriate. All information received is subject to verification. Public's comment is currently scheduled for 20 minutes. Those wanting to address the board during the public comment period are granted 5 minutes to address their topic. A staff member will monitor the time. Lengthy comments to the board should be submitted in writing. Formal complaints requiring a hearing will be filed in writing and submitted to the board of directors in compliance with the applicable board policy. Comments from the public public comments will be directed to the entire board and not to any individual director, since the board acts as a body. No personal attacks shall be allowed during the meeting. Failure to follow these requirements may cause the public comment period to be terminated. The board has adopted policies to provide prompt and equitable resolution of complaints and concerns for its members. Copies of our cooperative policies and procedures on public comment and filing complaints are available on the cooperative website.
Okay, terrific. Thank you for doing that. Let's go ahead and get public comment started. After that, do we have any public comment?
We do. I'm going to let Mark Pearson through.
Terrific. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Go ahead, Mark.
Hi there. Thanks for the opportunity. My name is Mark Pearson. I'm a member in District 4 and live at 560 Clearview in Durango Hills. And I've had a couple comments. One is I wanted to second the thanks to the line crews over the Christmas storm. We were out of power here for about 24 hours, but you know, I've lived up here 30 years and I've never seen a storm like that with so much wet, heavy snow and so many trees come down and tree branches. We had a big 24-inch diameter ponderosa snap off about 6 feet up and come down across our road, and fortunately didn't hit our power lines, but it was, you know, it's inconvenient to be out of power for 24 hours, but it's way more convenient to sit around a cozy fire in a snow globe than be out there in the middle of that storm, you know, wading through deep snow and in the dark and swirling blizzards. And I mean, those guys did an outstanding job, and really appreciate their commitment. And one of the things I also wanted to say is the power outage app that you guys have is really, really helpful. So you can see, you know, rather than just being annoyed that there's no power at your house, you can look and see if if you still have a connection, you know, via a cell service or something. But you can see where the crews are working, and you can see that, you know, Forest Lakes or Aspen Trails or Los Ranchitos, you know, has many hundreds of homes out, and you can kind of see why your neighborhood is maybe not getting the highest priority. So thanks for both the communications around that, and again, just the service for those guys doing an awful hard job. And I'm sure, you know, it was a terrible time of the year for them to miss their families that whole weekend too. So the other thing is I'm real interested in the member survey results that I see are on the agenda in a bit, and I hope you'll make available to the whole membership the results of that survey. I think it'd be, I mean, I don't know what all the questions are certainly, but I think it'd be really interesting to see what the members think about whatever it is you did ask them about. I presume it's service and reliability, and, you know, if they like the co-op or not, and what they think about, you know, things like safety and power lines and, you know, climate change and weather and whatnot. So anyway, I hope you will make public to the whole membership the results of that survey, because I think it'll be really informative to all of us. So that was it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Chanel, anybody else?
I don't see anyone else as of right now.
Okay. Let's give him another few moments. Okay, well, thank you very much. I guess comments are closed then. Moving on to item number 3, this is the consent board items. As we've done in the past, let's start by giving all the board members a chance to identify any items they want to pull out of the consent board items for direct discussion. Great, Kirsten, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to pull out H there, the resolution 2022-1.
Okay, thank you. And Rachel, did you have one? Okay. Okay, so with the removal of item H, the resolution for CO authorization, can we get a motion for the consent board items, for the remainder of the consent board items?
John Lee
Been
moved.
moved by Kohler.
Great. John Lee, second. Kohler. All in favor of the consent items that and
Aye.
say aye. Terrific.
Aye.
All opposed? All abstained? So terrific. All right, so now let's we're going to go ahead and separate out item H for discussion and approve. Do we start with an, help me, Graham, do we start with an approval and then have a discussion, or is it already sort of open and we go right into discussion?
I think we should have a motion and second to approve resolution 2022-1. And then if that gets motioned and seconded, then we can have a discussion.
Okay, so let's just do it that way. So it's clean. We get a motion for resolution 2022-1.
So moved.
I saw Bob Lynch, second.
Tim.
Tim, thank you. Okay, so now we are on the floor for discussion on this item. Kirsten.
Yeah, I asked this to be pulled for twofold. One is I really don't like resolutions in consent board items. And two is I want to be careful about calling out CEO authorizations. The CEO is authorized to do a lot of stuff. My concern is if we start feeling like we have to authorize specific things, that we're going to be down the road saying that we authorize the CEO to put in a toilet paper contract. It's of course the CEO has this authority, and I'm not sure why we are specifically calling this one out when we don't call out every other authority that the CEO has. And I appreciate, Graham, that you sent me a note on this, or sent us a note on it, and I'd like you to repeat what you said because I wasn't quite sure I had it. Thank you.
All right, so this actually is a board authority under our bylaws. So we would require specific delegation of this authority to the CEO. So our bylaws allow for the board to delegate some of its authority to the CEO. So the fact that it's specifically stated in the bylaws doesn't mean it's non-delegable. It's historically, we've done this in January of most of the years that I've gone back through and seen. But our bylaws at Article 13 have this as a board authority. So it needs to be affirmatively delegated.
Okay, so are there any other board authorities that we need to delegate so we don't do this piecemeal?
This is the primary one, right? So a lot of our other board delegations are sort of, I would say, more implied authorities that we delegate through Board Policy 103. So that's where the bulk of our delegations occur. And it's just that this so happens to be an express authority in our bylaws, which is, I believe, why historically previous council for the cooperative has encouraged this to be an annual resolution as opposed to placing it, pardon me, as opposed to placing it in Policy 103. Does that make sense?
Okay. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So I've seen this 3 times and this is the first time I'm paying attention to it. Is that? Sorry about that, guys. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kirsten. Tim, go ahead.
Yeah, it is at least the 3rd time, Kirsten. And prior to that, it wasn't. There were organizations that were being joined that were not explicitly authorized by the board. So we took this up and we did it in a way in which it came back to us every year so that we could be aware that we're making that explicit authorization rather than a in perpetuity kind of thing, right? I think there's another one which has to do with utilization of bank authorizations and some things like that that we ask are done on a yearly basis, right? So that we have exercised our oversight. And so, yeah, asking about it is probably a good idea, but we have done this for several years. Thanks.
Great context. Thank you. Joe, go ahead, please.
Kirsten had raised another question about putting resolutions on the consent agenda. I'd never thought of that, but Kirsten, do you want to explain anything more about that? I mean, should we make a blanket decision not to have them, or to have them, or to have some of them? I just wanted to follow up on that.
My preference is to not have them on at all. When I brought this up before, I think, I forget what the answer was, but it was basically, it's a fine place to have them. I think anything that rises to the level of a resolution should have a minimal discussion. These other things, we go through them offline and we're good about them, but I think at least, you know, opening the eyes gives us a chance to remember that we've seen it for 4 times now, for me personally. So I do not think resolutions should be there. And as long as I'm at the board meeting at this time, I will always ask for the resolution to come out, even if I don't have anything to say about it, because I don't think it belongs in the consent board item. I don't know what to, other than that, I don't know what to say, Joe. I don't have a good reason. I can't quote any Robert's rules or anything like that for you.
I wouldn't disagree. And it seems reasonable, but if someone calls it out, that works just as well, it seems.
So fair enough here. You know, I'm part of my job is to organize the agenda, but let's just not do these in consent going forward. It's just there's no rule or anything. I mean, I get to sort of put it wherever I want, so I'll just not put it here anymore. Okay, and then if the situation changes, we'll revisit it. Okay, all right, fair enough. Yeah, so Holly, looks like you had your comment answered. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I was just gonna reinforce Tim's point. If the point is to put it in front of us so we remember that specific authority, then it needs to not be in the consent items. That's all I was gonna say. Thank you.
Fair enough. Okay, so I think we can all agree on that. So we have an open motion. Let's absent any additional discussion, let's get the up down on this. So all in favor of the resolution as written, hold your hand up and say aye.
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 All opposed? All abstained? Great, the motion passes, or resolution passes. Thank you. Okay, moving on. So we're on item 4, CEO and staff reports. Go ahead. I think this is you, Jessica, first up.
Okay, I will share and hope this works. Can you see the dashboard?
God damn, that's a good looking picture.
I was going to say that everything's great except that picture.
Well, it was a great time. We appreciated the folks that could make it. We will continue to host tours because we thought it was great for staff to show off their good work, but also to spend time with the board, but also for the board to see the work. So stay tuned for more tours. Okay, I'm going to move on. So here is the dashboard. We have all green checks except for one, which is yellow, which is equity. We have talked about this before, that it's a bit high. We had this discussion at the last board meeting, why it is a little bit high and why Carl is not concerned about that, but he'll go into more detail on his finance report. Any questions on that one? And you may need to help me, John, because I can't see everybody's hands. Okay.
Yeah, I'm looking for him.
All right, December highlights. Again, a great picture of our bus. Just wanted to, this is not, I don't think of the dashboard, but just wanted to, again, thank our staff for really spearheading this. Dominic May is amazing at this work and really deserves a lot of the credit in working with the 9R and the city on this bus. Again, if you've not seen the articles that I sent you, this is the first time in Colorado that they've had this school bus have the V2G capability. So we're getting a lot of folks contacting us to meet with them to talk about this from all over the US, which is fantastic. So we want to continue this effort. As Dominic mentioned at the event, and work with more of our community to provide electric vehicles. Okay, so I'm going to cruise through some of these, but if there's questions, please don't hesitate to ask. I'm gonna just give you a pre-warning on the COVID numbers. They were 0 for December, but they're gonna be a lot higher for January because of the Omicron. Fortunately, we haven't had any employees hospitalized that we know, so that's good news. But as it is in La Plata, it's going through pretty quickly. I will call up the Legislative Affairs with Next Gen Cooperative Alliance because I believe Holly asked that question last time. So at the last board meeting, so just wanted to reiterate that this was the first meeting we had with this co-op alliance. I know there's been a lot of questions about the group. I'll be honest, I'm still trying to figure out the group and what they are for. As I mentioned, they're brand new. And this was a really good test to see what is the group for. So we did meet with FERC commissioners and Department of Energy staff. We could not talk about any of the cases because that is ex parte, so you have to stay away from that. So this was more of an introduction of what cooperatives are. And we also met, it's not in here, it should have been in here, but we also met with Jim Matheson and his senior team at NRECA. And it turned into a really good conversation that we've had follow-up meetings with the NRECA about, because one thing is clear is that FERC and Department of Energy, they have well, at least Department of Energy has a lot of money in the infrastructure bill, and they would like to send that money directly to the cooperatives, but they're not sure what to fund. And NRECA is struggling on how to give examples to Department of Energy, real world examples of things that DOE can fund. And so we had a great conversation with Jim Matheson of this group being a sounding board for NRECA to use and to put in contact with Department of Energy to show them some of the projects we're working on. Already I've had about 3 meetings with Department of Energy staff. We have a couple more set up to talk about what we did on the electric vehicle, the future of DERs, the hot water heater program we have at the mobile home park, future energy, partnership with Tri-State. So it was a really good event and effort. Again, I'm still holding out on Next Gen Cooperative Alliance. I think Kohler brought up before a little bit of concern in regards to some of the comments and publications coming out, but me being the chair, I've really tried to temper that and make sure that it's not a group that is for impacting the G&Ts in a negative way. The point is that we're all supposed to be partners in this together and look for opportunities. And so that's where this group is really forming. I'll keep you updated on other events. Right now, we haven't had a meeting since that trip to DC. So I'm assuming there'll be more in the spring. And one thing that is clear though, is that we will be setting up lunch and learns to board members. So you will all get invites for those. And the point of that is really to learn more about progressive ideas that other co-ops are doing across the United States. And we'll include other municipalities and publics to come present what they're working on. Like Austin Power has a pretty robust EV program. And so what we're trying to do is create another ad hoc educational forum for our members and our board members. So stay tuned for that coming. Any questions? I had a fun time at the Fort Lewis College speaking, so that was great. Great opportunity. Felt honored to do that. Tim, did you have a question? I can't, or Holly, can't see.
Yes, ma'am, I did. It's more of just an observation, because when I read this slide and when I was thinking about some of the entries you made on your expense report and stuff like that, I can really see all the meetings and all the relationship building and, you know, and then on this slide, it said connected the LPEA staff with these experts. And I just want to say thank you so much and kudos for putting LPEA out in the forefront and being willing to help develop those partnerships that are going to, in the long run, strengthen all of us, not just LPEA, it's the whole cooperative family. Thank you.
Thanks, Holly.
Yeah, I did have a couple questions. First, on the legislative affairs report you just gave, you know, I don't know the context, obviously, of the discussions around how to spend DOE money, but it seems to me that one place that that Colorado could use that would be in helping impacted communities from coal plant shutdown, specifically NUCLA, which Tri-State seems to have abandoned without very much funding. So I don't know if that's one of those things, but it's something I would suggest as a director. And I also would say, you know, if there is this opportunity, how do we influence that, both as a board and as members of the co-op, in terms of any infrastructure funding that they may be pondering how to utilize. And then my other question is, and maybe you're going to get to this, but I'm curious about the accidents and incidents part of the report.
Sure. That's a great point about the funding. So Tim Brad, the CEO of San Miguel Power, was with us, and he talked about this particular issue with NUCLA because it is in his service territory. So we did have that conversation, which was helpful. Yeah, we are, Department of Energy is supposed to be opening a public comment phase. We're waiting for that to happen. And so we have an opportunity as LPEA that we could submit comments. When that comes about, I will send it to the board and I can gather comments and we can compile those and then send them out to DOE. That would be a great opportunity. Yep.
Thank you.
Accidents and incidents. Jerry, do you want to talk about those, please?
One was a slip and fall on the ice. Another was a slipped knife that cut through one of our linemen's thumbs. And then the last one was we had a vehicle run a red light and hit one of our vehicles. No injuries, thank goodness. It was a pretty bad accident.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. So I'm not going to get into the winter storms or outage communication protocols right now because Jerry's actually going to give a presentation right after that to give you more details. So I'm going to cruise through that, but yeah, pretty massive storms that came through. So I know they appreciate the support that the board gave. Our work with crossover is still going on to see what kind of contracts we can develop. So that's with Fort Lewis College. Giving Tree was very successful this year. So we appreciate anyone who gave to that. Already helped roughly 250 member accounts, which was great. Joe, did you have a question on this?
Yeah, I was wondering about the just kind of the reasoning on the LPEA cable TV commercial and when that's airing and stuff.
Sure. Yeah. Hillary, I've already seen it. It looks fantastic, by the way. Hillary, go ahead.
Yeah, so we were reevaluating our advertising budget, and in looking at it closely, I thought that we were spending too much money on radio. Radio is clearly important. It hits a demographic that many other sources of media don't. And so we definitely wanted to maintain our media, but there were a couple of areas where I really felt that we were overspending. And so to do a bit of A/B testing, we decided to give a trial run for a cable commercial. We produced that and decided we wanted to do something that was pretty broad, something that could apply to anyone in our service territory. And so for our first trial run, we decided to do we decided to do one promoting our rebate programs. Comcast is pretty great because what they do is, beyond being able to be incredibly targeted, sort of, scarily targeted, they also do pretty robust tracking and reporting for us. So this cable commercial is specifically has one call to action. It asks our members to go to our rebate webpage. And so they have access to our Google Analytics, and they have been pulling a report that's going to show how much traffic has increased to that site and what the click-through traffic is as well, which can not only track a raised awareness, but also can track actually increased action on the rebate front. So this is a trial. It's running for 3 months. It's about ready to wrap up its run. And so as soon as that's done, I'll be happy to report back to the board with the full impact.
Great. Thank you. Okay. You know about the vehicle to grid bus launch, which was great. The only other thing I'm going to call out on this is that we have the KRTAs, as we've mentioned before, and the report is on Google Docs. It's been there for a while, so you have had access to see those. We are just going to start to pull out some of the great information that's come out of that. Carl is developing a full board presentation on that. That'll likely come in April. So just wanted to call out that we're going to keep putting out data points for the board. Rachel, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to some of the things that were brought up in the solar installer meeting, or if Dan will do that later.
I can touch on that. Yeah, Rachel, first off, it was very well attended. I think we had 20 or so folks in the room there to just talk about the settings, new settings we've used, talk about any kind of pain points people might have, and what kind of workarounds we can do, if anything. So just good open discussion and sharing some what we see coming in the future with as more stuff from crossover comes in. If once we get down, start heading down that road there. I don't know if I have any real specifics. I guess the biggest thing that we probably presented were the results of the new smart meter settings, which everybody's been really super curious about on the installer front, to show that, yes, you were allowed to put this system in an area that was otherwise fully, full of solar. And look, these settings did their job, and it didn't like kill the production of the solar output or anything like that. But definitely did what it was supposed to do. So it was just good to review that with them.
Awesome. And was there, it sounds like really positive conversation. Awesome to hear, as well attended. Did they have any feedback of shifts in policy or programs based on what you were addressing that we should know about, or good to go?
Like any kind of new recommendations or anything like that? No, not so much. A little bit of input. I want to develop an idea that was mentioned out there a little more before publicly mentioning it. But there's some good stuff on the horizon there.
Awesome. And I'll just plug one last thing, and maybe it came up or not. I'm really excited to hear that you were talking about what's coming down the pike and some of the, things happening with Crossfire. Oh gosh, sorry, Crossfire is another sector. Yeah, I think one thing, I was having a conversation with one of our installers the other day, and just as random out of the blue, take it or leave it. But one thought that came across is, as we design that partnership, I almost wonder if there's like an opportunity to have someone local in some sort of advisory capacity on how that but pieces of that get structured. Just they might bring some interesting things to the table as we look at how to maximize that opportunity for local workforce and economic development.
Great. Thank you.
You had a couple more questions, Jessica.
Tim?
Thank you. I was curious about first, I want to express appreciation to all who gave to the Giving Tree, and also the Four Corners Holiday Drive, and LPEA's role in facilitating these. And I'm curious how, if there's any data about how they compare to previous years. Was this an exemplary year, or average, or what?
So for the Four Corners Holiday Drive, we got more cash than normal, but less toys than normal. Part of that is because one of our largest toy donators is the Jeepers Creepers Club, and they come every year, and they have their annual meeting. They collect all their toys, and then they bring them to the drive. But this year, just because of the timing, they hadn't had their meeting yet. And so they came and brought some toys, but we didn't get the full donation that we usually get. But we did get more cash, which was great. As far as the Giving Tree program, we're still collecting funds for that through the end of this month. So I'll be able to bring in the January dashboards, I'll be able to bring the totals and how they compare.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. Okay, Kohler.
Yeah, on the record rebates there, I think I saw somewhere where the biggest rebate was heat pumps. And I know last month, Rachel mentioned that she was installing I think a heat pump hot water heater and couldn't find an installer who knew what they were doing. And at Tri-State, we did have a presentation about a Tri-State program that they put on to educate people on heat pumps, and they did it at San Miguel. And it's my understanding it was very successful. They spent the first part of the day with contractors, and then they also worked with members so that they could understand what it is that, you know, the heat pumps do and how they're a benefit for people. And I just wondered, are you considering maybe using Tri-State on that sponsored program? I heard it was very good.
Yeah, I'll let Hillary answer that.
Yes, so Kohler, we already are participating with them, and they have a training program that they do so that local installers can become qualified heat pump installers. And then the installer can also qualify for a $250 rebate every time they install a heat pump if they've taken this training. So we've been promoting that amongst our contractors. We have 8 local contractors who have already done that and that are now on a qualified installer list that we share with our members when they request it. But we do plan to expand that this year. We plan to do a lot more education, not only with our contractors on different types of BE tech, but also with our members. So that is something that we are definitely focusing on this year.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Rachel?
And I think just to follow up, I know that the heat pump training is taking place, and at least when I was talking with LPEA staff, they said that same process you're hoping to roll out for the water heaters, or at least put together the very similar resource package that's consumer facing. So if we do opt to install these things, we have that list. So that will be awesome.
Great. All right, I'm gonna keep going. Appendix. Okay.
Could I ask a quick question, Hillary? Why is it that we have to request that list rather than publish it?
We still need to work out that one's easy, and that one actually we're creating a section on our website that's called Electrify and Save. So it's our new beneficial electrification section on our site, and that list will be going on there, if not this week, then early next. For that one's easy because there's already a qualified training. And so it makes it easy for us to be able to recommend them because they've done the training. With the other programs, we get questions all the time. What electrician should I use? What contractor should I use for this? And we just need to get our ducks in a row to make sure that we don't get any legal trouble, that we don't become liable for something being done wrong if we recommend somebody. And so we already have a template in place with the qualified installer program that Dan's team did a great job on. So we just need to get all of our legal ducks in a row in the background before we can start sort of promoting those resources more fully.
All right, thank you.
All right, so as part of the dashboard, I'm going to have Jerry now share his storm update, please. So Jerry, you're up.
Can you see that?
Yes.
All right. Hopefully you got a chance to look at this in your board report. Good morning, everybody. As you all know, the recent storms were brutal, but it was amazing to see everybody rally, and we triumphed. It's a bad day when the snowcat gets stuck. This is headed towards Bournes Lake, the very last section of line on our system in Archuleta County. Looking at these numbers, they are huge. The definition of a permanent fault is when a device is completely open. Temporary fault is when an OCR trips and recloses, clearing the problem, re-energizing the line. And we probably had thousands of temporary faults. Half of our meters experience power outages. And this photo shows what happens when snow loads on the lines. That is the center phase. sagging lower than the neutral, making contact and creating an outage. That snow was about the size of a steering wheel. And that photo is courtesy of our foreman, Greg Smith. We had 101 total known causes. Known cause is a guarantee that an issue created the outage, such as a tree through the line. We can assume that the other 330 permanent faults were due to snow unloading, lines slapping together. But if we cannot guarantee it, they are not classified as known. Looking at these graphs, we can determine two things: the nature of each storm, wet, heavy snow, and high winds, and then also how our maintenance program has hardened the system with very few material issues that in the past would have plagued us. You get our SAIDI numbers, the duration calculation. On average, December is always a higher SAIDI month. But if you look at the rolling average, it is still below our year-end goal. The average for December before the storms was 15.73 minutes out of power per member. Now, when we add the storms on top of that, that number skyrockets. Looking at the same graph, 181.49 minutes, almost 3 hours per average. It's quite the increase. I was amazed at the overall teamwork and the coordination between dispatch and the crews in the field. It was as close to a Swiss watch as I've ever seen. However, we always have room to improve. These storms actually highlighted many of the things that we are working towards. We did have a question about the 24-hour shifts. We do not try to work our guys that hard. 16 hours is the limit. We will call them at 15 hours. We'll have them start heading back into the shop, and hopefully they get home right at that 16-hour mark, take their 10-hour rest period. We had a couple guys hit 24 hours during these storms due to unavoidable circumstances and extreme emergencies. One was a house fire, and one of our linemen, he was at 17 hours. He was the closest to the house fire. They needed immediate assistance, so we sent him, and he assisted the fire department while they fought the fire. The other ones were equipment failures, getting stuck out in the middle of the snow, in the boonies, and then also just plain getting stuck and having to get unstuck. This storm was brutal. This is a picture of the power pole at the intersection of Highway 172 and County Road 517 as you're coming into Ignacio. This pole was perfectly healthy. It snapped right at the ground level. And if you look at the snow, you can tell how hard that wind was blowing on the 15th. Most of the trees we had issues with, they were outside of our right-of-ways. This picture shows exactly what happens. The trunk of the tree is well outside of the right-of-way, but they get loaded up, they bend over the lines, and they break, they take lines down, shatter poles. The time between storms, it's extremely taxing, both physically and mentally, when there's no recovery time. But the crews dug down deep, never once complained. We were able to receive assistance from neighboring co-ops during the first storm. We assisted a neighboring co-op during the windstorm, but as the storms progressed, all the co-ops found themselves dealing with their own problems, and so we couldn't get assistance from anyone. When we stop looking for improvement opportunities, then we should retire. We strive for perfection. We've already started working towards all of these goals, all of them. And like I said earlier, these storms just highlighted our needs. Fiber controlled equipment. We have 5 Vipers currently out there on the system. They're going to cut down on outage times. They're going to give us useful information during outages and winter storms. They're going to improve our safety for our line crews. But most importantly, they're going to play a key role in our fire mitigation control. Dan's group has big plans to hit some major areas. And Dan and Drew's teams are already improving our comm system. We found some faults with the radios during the storms, but we know it's a huge task, but we got to get it done. The combination of technology and maintenance, we were able to coordinate and manage these storms much more efficiently than previous years. We're still far from perfect, but it was extremely impressive to witness firsthand the changes and the improvements just since my time being in the field. And I can't give the dispatchers enough credit. Even with the advancements in technology, it is still an extremely daunting task to manage. And I always say during a storm like that, it's like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube while getting swarmed by bees. And this last slide, I'm just going to read. This storm brought out the best in LPEA employees. They truly put themselves aside to serve our members. Our line crews worked relentlessly in terrible conditions through the biggest holiday of the year. 3 of them left their families at 3:30 a.m. to drive over Wolf Creek to assist and miss their baby's first Christmas. Dispatchers, MSRs, mechanics, managers all stepped up to try to keep the holiday electrified for every single household. It is an honor to work for such a wonderful member-driven company. Any questions? Thank you.
Rachel, go ahead.
Sorry, slow on the draw there, Joe. Thank you all for working so hard. I also, just for you as a manager and supervisor, director person, just want to acknowledge you, really acknowledging your team. I know how important that is. I'm curious how you all keep the scrub brush and everything else under the lines down. Do you have like a giant, this is going to sound silly, lawnmower?
They're called masticators, and that's one thing that we are looking to improve. A bunch of our outage times were greatly increased because we couldn't get any snow machine through areas to patrol the lines. And so the guys were strapping on the snowshoes and trudging through 3 feet of snow. So it is a room for improvement. It's going to take some work, but with the wildfires that have been plaguing the country, more and more people are beginning to understand the need for it.
Awesome. And I'm sure there's other resources out there for it, but I know, just bringing from my other life, at Telluride, we bought one of those masticators just to keep the runs clear. And I think they loaned it out last year for some folks to try. So maybe that's a possibility, just to kind of give it a test if of interest.
Joe?
Yeah, incredible job out there, you guys. I'm just really impressed. I'm sure I'm glad that there are folks like you out there doing that work. So thanks, Jerry, and all your crew out there. Just a couple of questions. You said early on that you didn't have material issues to deal with, and I was wondering what does that mean exactly?
So mostly our maintenance program, our Raptor protecting program, and our pole changeouts, reject pole changeout program, they have just really hardened the system. Getting rid of porcelain and ceramic material has really helped. We've gone to polymer, and so we don't have them cracking and tracking to the poles themselves. It was a huge difference from 2008. The Raptor protection program really cut down on a lot of outages.
I see. Okay. And then Viper, that's the system that automatically shuts down.
They are actually reclosures, but they are SCADA controlled. So we run fiber optics to all of them. And so dispatch can change settings from the office. They have impedance finding. So if there is like a tree on the line, they can give a general location to help direct the lineman to cut down outage times. Their capabilities are just phenomenal.
Okay. And there was one in there that I guess guys snowshoed for several miles. Is there a lot of that, or is that kind of a outlier?
There's a lot of that. A storm like this, snowshoes can get worn out. There's just with the terrain, we have plenty of places where we cannot get snow machines at all, and we can't energize a line until we are 100% sure that there's not a line down, just public safety.
All right. And last thing, I had to call Jessica on Christmas night. I had a friend of mine call from I think Durango West 1, and 3 minutes after he called, the lights went back on. So of course I took all the credit for that, but Jessica, thanks for answering my text that day.
Thanks, Joe. Kohler, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just wondering, when you assist another co-op or they assist you, do you have like a contract with them? How does that work as far as compensation for the workers and insurance and everything else?
So CREA heads it up. They coordinate the whole thing. They will get rooms, meals set up, and then I believe that each co-op will just invoice the others for the time.
So CREA does that. I didn't know that. Well, thank you. That's good to know.
Yeah, just to confirm, you're correct there, Jerry. That's exactly what happens.
Well, thank you all for your appreciation. Kirsten.
Yeah, a quick one. It is interesting that CREA does it. One of our closest ones is Rio Arriba, and that's in New Mexico. So I wonder if we have opportunities, or if we would even know if they needed help, if it's a CREA coordination. I don't know how that would work.
Usually, Kirsten, they'll send out a call out, or they'll contact CREA. And so like Farmington, City of Farmington actually reached out to me during the storm and asked if we needed help, which was great. And we'll do the same if we see them getting hit. We're in constant communication with the other co-ops in our area just to make sure everyone's being taken care of and getting help.
Great.
That's a good question. Yes. All right. Again, Jerry, thank you. That was awesome. And Garrett, we know you guys worked super hard, and pretty proud of this co-op. It is pretty amazing, the people that work here. So we appreciate all your support.
Kudos. Thanks.
Okay, I'm going to move to Carl's finance report.
Thank you, Jessica. Okay. If everyone can see that. So December 2021 financials, our final 2021 financial. As those of you at the Finance and Audit Committee will have heard, we actually came in very close to budget in December. We were actually slightly under. I believe we reported out at the FAC that we were going to be slightly over, but when we finished with work orders, there were a few expenses we had not yet captured. So we actually ended up slightly under budget with our operating margin for 2021, which, considering the considerable cost associated with the Christmas outages, I feel like the wretched bean counter coming along after the guys have performed heroic works. And yeah, that costs a lot of money, but I don't want to detract from the amazing job that they did. But obviously the guys out there working incredibly long hours at the holidays, they deserve every penny they got. But there was a considerable overtime bill and some other maintenance costs associated with that. And obviously, as Jerry mentioned, the help we got from the other co-ops. So there was a cost overall of around $288,000 associated with the Christmas outages, but we also were under budget on a few items. Obviously, we have our power costs being lower due to the 2% rate reduction, and our general and admin costs were over $100,000 under budget, mainly from lower legal and professional fees. So you kind of balance a few things out, and we landed very close to our budget for December. So we look at our financial goals. So this is for the whole year. We've got 4 green ticks and our orange tick. Just to reiterate, the reason equity percentage is higher than 50% is because of those higher margins. It's not because we're not retiring our capital credits on a timely basis. We did, in fact, retire more in 2021 than we ever have before, $5.5 million. So everything else is exactly where it's meant to be. Our cash reserves were right on the money. That's after paying out those capital credits. So I was predicting they'd be just over 16%. So it was very gratifying that we got there just on about 2 days before year end. So other than that, all looking good at the end of 2021 going into 2022. If we look at our margins and how we performed against our budget, you can see that Q1 was where we significantly outstripped what we had budgeted. We end up with an operating margin around 4.5 million, and 3 million of that came in Q1. I mentioned on my commentary on the expanded financial that from Q2 onwards, we were a lot closer to the budget, and the main difference really was the cost of power and those legal and professional fees that I had mentioned a few minutes ago. But every quarter we did outperform the budget, and Q4, obviously the latest one that we've added, we budgeted around 500 and came in around $1 million. So here's some highlights to look at. For the full year, our total operating costs, so these are our costs that we control, not the cost of power. They were $2 million below forecast, and around $1 million of that comes from general and administrative, legal and professional fees being a main driver there. So for December, just the month of December, our labor costs were around $250,000 over forecast, which we've already discussed. Delinquent accounts, once again, incredibly low, especially considering, difficult economic times. 0.02%. It was 0.03 last month, which had a slight decline. I do know that the Giving Tree certainly helped there, but not enough to make a percentage change. But I know, it certainly helped some of our members, and some of the gratitude we got from them was really heartwarming. And a lot of it came from our staff as well. So I want to salute them as well. So sales of kilowatt hours, 3.1% below forecast. It's kind of where we've been at most of the year, although December itself, surprise, surprise, because it was pretty chilly, as I recall, was very close to forecast. For the full year, our gross margins were 1.2 million above forecast. That's really driven by that reduction in Tri-State's rates that came into effect in March, and also with our mix being more driven towards residential use than industrial use. So if you combine that 2 million on operating costs and the 1.2 million of gross margin, you come to, that's how come we were $3.2 million over forecast on our operating margins for the full year. Now, there may be some very slight changes to December once our auditors have looked over our books. And if we get some, very late invoices, we will add them to make sure they get into December. We have found one for about $16,000, which we got a couple of days ago. So that there may be some slight change between what we're reporting now and what ends up in our Form 7 and our audited accounts. But last year it was very minimal, and I anticipate that being the same again. Our invoice processing is very efficient, but there just may be a couple that we get very late. So just to bear that in mind. And any questions? Thank you.
Tim, go ahead.
So, Carl, I didn't, that was that report, those slides, I didn't see them in the in the board packet. Did that come later?
I sent it to Janelle around the right time, so I think they should be there. Janelle, do you know why they might not be? Is the full report there, Tim?
Well, I don't use the iPad. I download the PDF, and I downloaded it yesterday morning, and I don't think it was there then. So,
like the 12 pager was that there?
Your yeah, the full report of financial.
Okay.
And in that, so anyway, that's one question, but that was very December focused, and it was helpful a couple of those slides. So anyway, in that report on the balance sheet, there's and I think I've asked this before, but maybe remind me. At the very bottom in the assets is a other deferred credits. Can you remind me what that is?
Sure.
Number.
So let me remind myself exactly how much that is, and then I can break it up for you. One moment. So other deferred credits, we're looking at around 11 million.
Yes.
I wasn't sure if it broken the 11 million barrier, but it had. So there's a few things in there. One of them is the rate stabilization fund of $4 million. We also have our medical accrual for our self-funding account sits in there. That's around $1 million. And then we also have some other where we've received payments from what's the word I'm looking for? Payments for jobs like contributions towards construction that's not yet been used.
All right. So
we also have, sorry, Tim, just one more thing I forgot, where we've paid for some right of ways, and the amortization goes through here as well.
So is that, I thought temporary investments was the rate stabilization.
That's like the other side of the equation. So we have a provision for it. And then you have to have the cash to balance it in order to have such a provision.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Carl.
Thanks, Tim. Joe?
Yeah, and I apologize. I didn't realize the consultant and contractor report was under the consent agenda. So a couple of questions on that. And I just want to say there's nothing on here for meter reading. So congratulations on that. And then on Ward Electric, almost $700,000. Was that for the substation, or what is that a bunch of different work? What are they doing?
Yeah, they do. They work with us on a bunch of different capital projects. I don't know if Dan or Jerry want to add anything to that, but they are the main contractor that we use to assist us with capital work.
Okay. And then the ROW and staking, right away and staking, is that so is that like a specialized work that's not worth it for us to try to do, or what is that?
Jerry and Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's just we have too much for our team to take on and we have to farm some of it out.
That's correct, Carl. And on some of them, it takes specialized equipment, especially the overhead line staking. There takes, there's some fancy computer equipment that can be used that the larger contractors will have and we don't, so they can be more efficient with their time doing that.
And so is this for new construction, or is this kind of ongoing all the time to do this kind of work?
Most of what I think you'll see the contractors doing is going to be work plan type projects, larger overhead rebuilds and that sort of thing.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Rachel?
Just want to say biggest high five ever for page 83, the glossary of terms. That thing is amazing. I used it. Yeah, this is my most positive experience yet with our financials. So thank you so much. If I could share my screen, I would. I put a big heart on it with the pen function. So thanks for that. And then other question, this is more like strategic level, but page 73 looks at our performance statistics. And so for December 21st, year to date, we're down 0.8% from our 2020 power purchase power, I guess. And don't we have it as one of our metrics of success for beneficial electrification, or I guess prepare for the future, is that we'll increase sales by 5% off the 2020 baseline? And so curious, is that the right metric? Because there's so many factors that go into that. Yeah, is that the right metric? And also, if we're still keeping with that, like what's the time frame to bump to 5%? If you could just remind me.
5% was over 5 years, the 5-year work plan. Yeah, but you're right, that's a tough one to hit. That's, especially with COVID, we didn't see that one coming.
Yep.
Reduced a lot of sales right away there. Very susceptible to industrial usage.
Okay, there's no further questions for Carl. Then let's push on to member survey results.
I'll kick it over to Hillary.
Screen. You guys see that? All right, you guys can see that? Great.
Yep.
All right, so I'm going to be giving a broad overview of the 2021 membership satisfaction survey that we did last year, and also the tri-state survey that they did towards the end of last year. Just to give you guys an overview of what I'm going to cover today. First, I want to talk a bit about the background of this survey. Then I want to discuss a really important methodology note that's important for us to keep in mind as we go through these results. Then I'll give just an overview of some of the main takeaways that we had in reading these surveys. I'll then give sort of a broader overview of the results, which includes the member segmentation that was done as a part of this survey and some member demographics. Then I'll go into the tri-state survey highlights. And to wrap up, I'll explain where you guys can see more and talk about what next steps are. So just a bit on the survey background. We've been using NRECA, the survey arm of NRECA, since 2007 to do our surveys. And we decided to partner with them again to run this for us. In total, towards the end of last year, we had 466 members who were successfully surveyed, 366 of those online and 100 on the phone. And that gave us a 95% confidence level, which is similar to our past surveys. And basically what that means is that even though we only surveyed 466 of our members, we can say with a 95% confidence that they are representative of our entire membership. So the one thing that was different this year from past years is that this year, or last year in 2021, 75% of our surveys were done online and 25% of them were done via phone. Now that's a flip from what we've done in the past, where we've done 25% online and 75% on the phone. And that is very important to note because people consistently give lower scores when they're taking online surveys versus phone surveys. This is something that NRECA warned us about. They let us know before we contracted with them that they have done a methodology switch for all of their cooperatives across the United States, because quite simply, people aren't picking up the phone anymore. And it's very, very labor intensive to even get 100 members on the phone, let alone 300 members on the phone. So as of a year or two ago, they shifted to doing much more predominantly online surveys than phone surveys. And what that has meant for every cooperative is lower scores. And the reason that is because people in general, when they are talking to somebody on the phone, they have a real live person, they have an inherent desire to please that person and to also have that person like them. So in general, they're going to give a lot more positive scores to a human being than they do to a computer screen. And so for that reason, I just want to clarify to you that when we see drops, it's not always because of anything that we've changed or done differently. Most of the time it has directly to do with the methodology switch. And so in a couple instances, I've put some weighted scores in here so you can see how we would be doing apples to apples. So here's just an example of that. So
Hillary,
this is, yeah, go ahead.
Before you push on, I think Rachel had a quick question.
Sorry, and I can't see anybody, so please go ahead and call out any questions, yeah.
No worries. It's just a methodology question. So as I'm looking at numbers moving forward, I get it. So I know in-house we flip-flopped, and so in-house data, there'll be that discrepancy unless, to your point, you've kind of weighted. If we compare ourselves against CRTAs or others, have they also flip-flopped and changed their methods to that 75% survey, 25% phone?
Yes, so all of the other, basically NRECA changed their standard offering.
Okay.
If cooperatives were interested in keeping the same methodology, then the costs dramatically increased because it just takes so much more of NRECA's time to try and get people on the phone.
Great. So when we compare ourselves against our NRECA national data for this year, we're all, for the most part, on the same page and as in prior years. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Tim, go ahead.
Yeah, I hear you. Gotcha. Thanks. So Hillary, my question is, with this methodology change, I understand, yeah, people want to be more friendly on the phone, but the real question is, which is more accurate?
It's a good question. I mean, I think that surveys are dependent on a lot of things. It depends on the day that you get someone. It depends on the mood that they're in. It depends on whether they're in person or online. And so I think that, I mean, the way that we're viewing this is, yes, there's going to be, a drop in scores because of this methodology change. But regardless, these are our new baselines moving forward. So what we're really trying to do with this survey was set the baselines so that we can measure our improvement over the 5-year plan, which Dan just mentioned earlier. And so I think regardless, we have to take the results that we have as being accurate.
All right, good answer. Thank you.
So I just want to show this and just a note on the weighting and how they did the weighting, because I will be showing you a few weighted charts just so you can see we're comparing apples to apples. What they did is they weighted all the previous data. So the data points for 2021, as you can see here, is the same, but they went back and weighted all the historical data so that it matched the same methodology of 25% on the phone and 75% online. So with the weighted scores, what this chart is showing you is just overall, everything is going up. But obviously the unweighted chart is a little bit different. So I just wanted to show you guys this up at the front, and we'll talk a bit more as we go through the charts. But before I launch into the results overview, I just want to give you what our main takeaways are, our 4 main takeaways. So as I mentioned, our scores have mostly increased or stayed consistent, and that's when waiting for the new methodology. There are a couple areas where we've seen some drops, and I'll go over those with you, and those are definitely areas that we will seek to improve moving forward. The second takeaway is that, again, this is the first survey we did at the beginning of our 5-year operational plan. So we really wanted to set some baselines that we can continue measuring over the course of our 5-year plan. We have some new indicators in there, including transparency, the likelihood of adopting BE tech. So now we have some great baselines that we can aim to improve in the coming years. The survey also showed some strong member support for recent board decisions around broadband and around the discontinuation of Colorado Country Life. We wanted to take our members' pulse on those. And we have a new member segmentation analysis, which we found very interesting. We're still digging into the results and hope you find interesting as well. And I'll be going over those in the course of this presentation. So now let's look at some of the results. So this is the American Customer Satisfaction Index. This is the best indicator of just our overall customer satisfaction, how our members feel about the service that we provide to them. So overall satisfaction with LPEA is very good, with a mean rating of 8.72. This is consistent, very consistent with our previous scores. But as you can see, as indicated by the orange or red line there, it's well below the co-op norms. When I went back and looked at our surveys from previous years, this has always been the case. Ever since NRECA has been doing surveys for us, we've been well below co-op norms. So I asked them why, because obviously we would like to be above co-op norms, right? And interestingly enough, the American South and the American Midwest rank their utilities higher across the board than do the East and the West. So we are considered to be a part of the West, which means that we just get a lower ranking than the South and the Midwest, and that's consistent for all the utilities in the East and the West. So I thought that that was an interesting data point that I wanted to share with you. So how does this compare to how we've done in the past on this score? As you can see, it's very consistent. This is an unweighted chart. So if I had weighted this, probably you would see us more up at 83 or 84. But in general, even with the change in methodology, we've stayed very, very consistent, always kind of around the 81, 82, 83 range. Interesting data point here. It looks like Archuleta likes us more. Across the board, Archuleta County members give us higher scores than do La Plata County residents. So that was just an interesting data point that I wanted to share with you all.
Because of the outstanding representation on the board, I assume.
Undoubtedly, John.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next indicator I wanted to share with you guys is our overall member service scores. Now, as you can imagine, this being in my area, I was very concerned about these scores. Everything went down, some of them down quite considerably. And so what I did, just because these indicators are so important to us, how friendly are we? How easy are we to reach? How well do we resolve problems? I wanted to compare, again, apples to apples. So I had NRECA do 2 weighted charts on these so we could see actually how we were doing, getting rid of the differences with the methodology switch. And this is what those charts showed. So as you can see, we still have a drop in communicating and keeping our members informed. We still have a drop in keeping our members' best interests at heart. So those are areas that we will be focused on moving forward, trying to get some more information about why that might be the case. And also, again, here's another weighted score for the other indicators. So as you can see with the weighted scores, the friendly and easy to reach stay pretty consistent, But again, the resolving issues and problems has gone down. So even with these weighted scores, those have gone down, and those will be areas that we will be focusing on for improvement as we move forward into our 5-year plan. The next indicator that I wanted to share with you guys is our member loyalty index. So this sounds kind of vague, but what this is based on is questions like LPEA is one of the best organizations of its time. I usually approve of LPEA's policies and procedures. I have a good relationship with LPEA. I think of LPEA as an ally, and I'm proud to be associated with LPEA. That's all of those questions combine to create this score. So our score is a 77, which is healthy. Personally, all of us would like to see this score go up. We have a target to get that to 80 over the course of our survey or our 5-year plan. And just for your guys' information, members most strongly agree that they have a good relationship with LPEA, which is great. But the statement, I usually approve of LPEA's policies and procedures, is generally evaluated lowest. And these are greatly correlated with sense of member satisfaction and member identity. So I wanted to again see how we were doing over time on this index. So I again asked NRECA to pull a weighted chart for us so we could see, apples to apples, how are we doing over time? And with the weighted chart, you can see that we have stayed consistent, and in some areas we are actually increasing. So that data is there for you to see as well. Just FYI, in the future, I will not be including weighted charts. We can't weight things for the rest of time. But at least the next survey we do will have a couple of data points with the new methodology, so it'll be easier to do comparisons. So this year, we also wanted to set some baselines around the likelihood of adopting electric technologies. And this chart shows that. So as you can see, our members are most likely to adopt electric vehicle plug-in hybrid, outdoor electrical equipment, or electrical bicycles. Heat pumps, ETS, and induction cooktops are among the lowest. So that tells us we definitely have some room to grow in improving our education and our promotion of those types of products. We also wanted to know the awareness of our different LPEA programs and services. Some of these have historical data because we've asked these questions before. Some of them don't. They're new because we wanted to set baselines. But the good news is there's really great awareness of Smart Hub, which is our online bill pay platform. We've also seen a dramatic increase in the number of members that are aware of our optional time of use rates and are aware of our rebates. However, there is definitely room for improvement when it comes to raising awareness of grant programs for nonprofits, our on-bill financing program, the fact that we have free EV chargers. And so these are areas that we will be seeking to promote moving forward. We also wanted to gauge our members' support for some recent big decisions that have been made. We asked our members how they felt about our decisions around being involved in local broadband services. And as you can see, overwhelming support for that. We also wanted to ask our members how they felt about the discontinuation of Colorado Country Life magazine. And as you can see here, also overwhelming support for that decision. We also asked a series of questions on transparency and also on the board for the first time this year. So again, we have no historical data to compare, but we wanted to set this baseline and see how we can improve these moving forward. So these are the ratings on being transparent on our business operations, being transparent on our future plans, and also the competency and effectiveness of the board.
Hillary, we have a question. Kristen, go ahead.
Yes.
Hey, thanks, Hillary. I'm enjoying this presentation. I want to talk to the board for a second. I know this is the first time we've had it, so we don't have historical. I do note that of this grouping, the being transparent, the being on operations, on future plans, and the having competent, effective board, that the having a competent, effective board is the worst rated, not by much, but it's 3.9, 3.76 for an average of 3.79, which is let's see, 200 basis points smaller than the other ones. So I'm just want to talk to the board about, and maybe we put this on John, maybe we want to put this on a future thing about what can we do to not only appear more competent, but God forbid, be more competent and be more effective. And is that training, is that whatever? So whether we want to discuss this now, John, or at a later point, I'll leave that to you.
Okay, thanks. Let's hear what Tim has to say, and then I'll offer my own thoughts.
I mean, this is useful. The presentation's good. The question around board, I mean, there's a referendum every 3 years and a survey of all the members that takes place, and people get elected or not elected. And I think, you know, this is a survey of all members, whereas the survey that results in elections seems to be of those that are interested. So there's a delta there that I'm not sure how you account for in a survey like this. But I would just sort of say, you know, who gets elected is probably the defining survey of boards and board members.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah. So to answer, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Kirsten. Finish you had a follow-on thought there.
No, wait, John.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So to answer your question directly and to weigh in, and I think I agree with Tim in that if there was, you know, deep dissatisfaction in the board's competency in that sort of macro level satisfaction, you would see that reflected in significant turnover in elections every 3 years. I do agree with you. There's always room for improvement, and it's something that we should, you know, always be working towards. And I think to say, well, how can we do better, requires a deeper dive than saying simply, you know, how do we get that number up? Because that number, we can, you know, we can mail a chocolate bar to every customer, and our satisfaction will go up. That doesn't mean we're actually doing better. And so I would look to sort of ways that we can tactically improve always. And I think that would be time well spent on one of our in an offsite or a environment where we can be more collaborative and more frank, feel safer to acknowledge our own shortcomings without and being able to speak with impunity amongst sort of colleagues and collaborators. That would be, I am answering your question at a personal level, not speaking.
Right. I was interested in the use of time. I know you always try to keep us on track, and I don't want to go into a long discussion. Maybe, you know, if we can give 2 minutes or to it like we are now, that'd be great, but we do need to have a longer discussion.
I mean, my personal opinion on the matter is that certainly in comparison to the current sitting federal Congress, we're doing great. And I think that my own experience and my own observations on sort of board and elections and at these levels is there seems to be a high watermark in that there's always a constituent that is relentless in their dissatisfaction of a board, whether that's a federal Congress, state, senators, city, county. It simply doesn't matter where you are. There's just sort of seems to be a high watermark, and 5 out of 5 is impossible for ideological reasons. That does not absolve us of the importance of always trying to do better. My personal read is that those are pretty good numbers, actually. But again, speaking personally, Rachel, why don't you weigh in on this subject?
Great, and I feel bad because I don't want to derail Hillary on this.
Yeah.
But this is definitely the meat of a few things that got pulled out for me, and I just wasn't, looking at the next steps and focus areas. I noticed nothing was in this area of the board, operations, functions, et cetera. And yeah, there's that fine line between the election is definitely a referendum. And as you pointed out, John and Kirsten, there's always more we can do to be more effective outside of the politics of the matter and outside of us as individuals. So really excited for that conversation. And I guess my, the offsite, if you will, question for Hillary would be, you know, as we, if you have data now, or as we prepare for that type of a conversation, if there's any way to look at the data you received in it was dissatisfaction around policies, and then also board competence or effectiveness, if there are any kind of more specific threads you can pull out of whether that's perception, whether that is content, whether that's messaging, who knows? And I don't know if this survey gets there, but that'd be of interest.
Yeah, I would add, I would just add two things. One on the context, Rachel, at the very end of the PDF, which is in your guys' Google Drives, of the full report, there's all the verbatim member comments. So that's where you can really dig into the qualitative elements of that. So I'd encourage you guys to do that if you're interested. The second thing that I wanted to bring up, just context-wise from NRECA, is when they were presenting the survey results to me, they said that in general, in times of great change, and that doesn't even necessarily mean with the utility, but in times of great change, also in times of great change, you know, obviously we've got power supply stuff, broadband stuff, people have a tendency to vote lower regardless of how that change is going to impact them, because just the very sense of uncertainty makes people give lower scores. So, you know, we've set a baseline here. I think this is something that we can watch moving forward. But at this point, I'm not sure how much I would read into it as a single data point.
Thank you. Kohler, go ahead, please.
Yeah, on page, I have it on page 84, 138, the mean ratings by year, where it shows those dropping. And I was wondering, is there any consideration given to the effect of COVID? Because I would think that, you know, resolving some issues would probably have been tougher since staff isn't in. Same with some of the communications. And so I was just asking, is there any consideration in that direction?
It could be for sure. I mean, the good thing is that, you know, as far as benchmarking us goes, every co-op in the nation has been dealing with the same thing. But as far as reading into exactly what the low scores are, those are going to take some more qualitative engagement with our membership to determine, and we will be doing that in the years to come.
Okay, thank you.
Bob,
All
go
right.
ahead.
Thanks. Just a quick one. I like that those questions about, you know, really questioning the membership on, do they like our initiatives like local broadband, and it was great to ask about Colorado Country Life, which is kind of surprising how much they're happy with that. That was good. Is there a question I missed in here anywhere about how do you feel about LPEA's, you know, looking into alternative power suppliers? I don't think I see that, or am I missing it?
We didn't ask that question in the survey.
Okay, so I find it interesting. Like, people love broadband and they love getting rid of Colorado Country Life. But if we had, this is all speculation, if we had said, how do you feel about the time we're spending, you know, or the prospects of alternative power suppliers, we might not get as higher ratings, or we might, I'm not sure. But I hope next year we ask that, because that'll probably be more of something, hopefully something we have done. And I kind of think that, like you said about change, I think sometimes getting the lower scores overall for LPEA, I'm not really concerned about the scores for the board, but overall for LPEA, some people don't, just my suspicion is some people just don't like the fact that we're looking into alternative power suppliers, and some people love that. And that kind of splits the vote a little bit there too. So my comment, and hopefully we'll ask about that next year. What do you think, Hillary?
Yeah, I think that's something that we can consider in the next survey. It's something that we've asked in past surveys. Mm-hmm. And I would direct you, Bob, as well to the qualitative comments in the back of the survey. report. As you surmised, there is a great difference of opinion, with some really cheering us and some really just discouraging us. Yeah.
Yeah, and I sort of bet that, to your point about change, that drives down in general, that the average score on some of the happiness with LPEA or directions we're heading, that kind of thing. So thanks for pointing that out on the qualitatives.
No problem. And I still have, maybe I had said something that made you guys think I was finished, but I still have about 18 slides to get through. Would it be all right if I just start motoring through?
Frank,
and then save any additional questions to the end?
That'd be great. But yeah, great. So go ahead.
Okay. All right. So the next, we wanted to know how our members prefer us to communicate with them. And this trend has continued with more interest in digital communications. Our members prefer direct mail and phone text, far and above the third and fourth, which is a printed newsletter, direct mail, and co-op website. So just interesting to note. All right, and now I want to get into the member segmentation section. So we decided this year to take advantage of a national member segmentation study that NRECA completed. Basically, through their study and analysis, they segmented all co-op members across the United States into 5 separate categories, 5 separate consumer segments: environmental champion, cost-conscious supporter, complacent consumer, low-tech skeptic, and pro-tech skeptic. And they segmented the public into those categories and did full profiles on each. I've included their segmentation study in your board documents, would encourage you to look through that if you geek out on that kind of stuff like I do. In general, when they completed this, when they did this segmentation nationwide, this is how it was split. This is a national average. Generally, co-ops have 25% environmental champions, 29% complacent consumers, and the rest split between the other categories. So we really wanted to get a sense for how this applied to our service territory, and these are the results that we found. So as you can see, we have more than double the national average of environmental champions in our service territory, and we have less than half the number of complacent consumers in our service territory. In general, what that means is that we just have very engaged, we have a very engaged membership, which is great. And also a membership that cares more about environmental concerns and issues than perhaps the national average does. So briefly, I wanted to also just go over some member demographics. There's more information on this in the full survey, but I'll just cover a few points as for now. First is age. So as you can see, we have a overwhelmingly older population above the age of 55. And in recent years, you'll see that those ages are actually going up. So basically from 45 and up, those ages we're getting more people of those ages into our service territory in recent years, whereas the under 44s are going down. So we're actually decreasing in the amount of younger people that we have in our service territory. Also, type of residence, 83% are year-round, and we have 17% that are seasonal or recreational. And here's some basic information on education. We have about half split between higher education and no higher education. Our biggest blocks of residents have either been here less than 2 years or more than 15. We have around half that are married and half that are single, and 70% that own their homes and 30% that rent their homes.
Hey, Hillary. Do you have, I didn't see whether that data around the education compares to, a national norm or anything?
Yeah, Kirsten had a question about how something else applied to a national norm. I would need to go back to NRECA for that. So if you guys have any questions regarding a metric that applies to a norm, if you could just email that to me and I'll compile that and get back to you.
Great, thank you.
All right, and so The reason that we're a little later in getting these results to you is because we wanted to go ahead and present to you the tri-state survey results as well. They did a survey with our membership towards the end of last year that was less focused on member satisfaction, more focused on the use of energy. And this was going to help them plan for their future power supply needs. And so I want to share just a few highlights from that with you now. Basically, half of our members, a little more than half, have access to natural gas. And as you can see, natural gas is the largest primary heating fuel in our service territory, with 42% heating their homes with natural gas. Propane and electricity are both equal at about 24%. So what this shows us is that we have a lot of room to gain some market share here, potentially get more of those propane people switched over to electricity, potentially even natural gas.
Can I ask a quick question? You just said in our service territory, is this broken down by our service territory, or is this tri-state as a whole?
This is our specific service territory. So this was interesting as well. When asking our members if they needed to replace or add to their heating system, what system would they choose? A whopping half of them, more than half, said they didn't know. So what that means is I think we've got a great opportunity to educate people on the benefits of electric. So potentially when it does come time to replace a heating system, they would consider electric technology moving forward. Also interesting to note that about 58% of our members still don't have cooling systems, while 20% do. I think this is an opportunity to promote the cooling aspects of a heat pump system, something that we can be promoting more as we move forward. And finally here, just an interesting slide on what energy efficiency measures people have performed in their homes. So as you can see, a lot of people have unplugged appliances, upgraded to Energy Star, adjusted their heating or thermostat, but not very many people have done energy audits, upgraded to smart thermostats, or added insulation. So some other areas to potentially target. And so that is just a small sampling of the data that is available to you guys if you're interested. You can find the full LPEA residential member satisfaction study report, the full tri-state report, and the full NRECA national segmentation study in your board Google Drive under LPEA member satisfaction surveys and 2021 survey materials. I'd recommend you guys to go in there. If you have any questions based on anything else, please just send me an email and be happy to get back to you. So what are we going to do with all this data? I just have 2 slides left. Just talk a little bit about how we're using this data moving forward. So in our 5-year operational plan, we have set some targets, and thanks to this survey, we have some baselines set. So we set a target of 90% of our members are satisfied with us overall. We have a baseline set at 88%, thanks to this survey. We had a target that 90% of our members are very satisfied with our online experience, and we have a baseline set at 87% for that for now. We also had a target for our member loyalty index to be 80 or higher, so our baseline is set at 77. And we added some targets about increasing the likelihood of adopting BE tech, and those baselines are also set thanks to this survey. I didn't include the exact baselines in the slide because they didn't fit. There were too many of them. But the one slide I showed you around likelihood of adopting, those have become our baselines. And so what are we going to be focused on? General member services wise, we really want to focus on that having members' interests at heart. That's something we definitely want to be watching, digging into that a little bit more to learn why that might be and how we can improve our services. We want to focus on resolving problems or issues for our members better, and also supporting the community. That's a big indicator of satisfaction with the utility. We didn't go over that in the slide, but that's another area we'll be focusing on. Also, as far as our communications go, we will be focused on communicating BE tech, being more targeted in who we are communicating with and what we are communicating to them, focusing on our programs and services and what's available, And then also utilizing text message more, since that was the second most popular way that people preferred to be communicated with. We already have an initiative plan to be tapping into that technology more moving forward. And thank you guys for hanging in there with me. There was a lot to present. And again, happy to answer any questions. I know we're a little over time. Sorry, John.
You are doing good. Thank you for doing that. Yes, you're correct. We're 4 minutes over, but this has been, we've all been waiting for this for a long time. So I would I think we're good going a little long on this subject unless other people disagree. So cut me off. I can't believe I'm saying that if we're going too long, but let's start with Sue.
All right, thank you. Tim had mentioned that we do a 3-year survey for all of the membership. Will 2023 be that year, or when will that next full membership survey be?
So we've switched to biennial, so every other year. So we did one in 2021. So the next one will be done in 2023. And then we will have another one in 2025, which will be used to sort of bookend our 5-year strategy period of time. So this one will be the baseline, and that one in 25 will be the final results of how we've done.
Okay, thank you.
Terrific. Thank you. Tim, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I didn't realize I was next, but hopefully I'm not jumping the queue here.
You're fine.
So I'm curious about what is the plan to make this data available to our members?
Yeah, so I think what we are planning on doing is, we talked with NRECA about typically what is shared. They don't recommend sharing the full PDF just because a lot of things can be taken out of context, but they do recommend sharing a summary similar to what we've done in this presentation here. So we will be doing an article on our website. We've got it ready to go, but we wanted to present it to you guys first. So we will be doing an article on our website and promoting that to our members. We'll also have a couple of pages in our annual report dedicated to giving an overview of the survey. Since the survey was completed in 2021, we want to make sure to include that in the 2021 annual report.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, the members pay for this. It just seems kind of, I don't know. That might not help our transparency rating much. So,
yeah, I think, in talking with NRECA, our primary concern was that, without a thorough explanation of the methodology change, a chart could be copied and pasted and shared in a context with misinformation about, oh, look at LPEA is really doing poorly and look at how their scores have gone down. So I think as long as we're able to share it, control the content in a way that we share it that gives the proper context, I'm fine with sharing it. But would be concerned about, and NRECA also discouraged against that out of context sharing of data.
Thank you.
You good? Okay, Rachel.
Yeah, I have just a couple of questions. One, since we now have segmented data, have you or will you be kind of looking at some of the preferences or correlations across segment types? So as an example, is there any correlation between age and segments and their preferred comm strategies, like anything like that that could be useful to your comm strategy?
Yes. So in the full report, they did a great job of saying, okay, here's your segment of pro-tech skeptics, for example. You have 15% or whatever our total is on that. But then they also said this segment was more likely to give you high scores in this and low scores in this, or rank this and this. So they sort of correlated the data for us so we can get a better understanding of not just the national definition of that segment, but also what that segment feels specifically about us here in our district. So that's there in the PDF. I would encourage you to read that, and we will be using that moving forward as well.
That's awesome, because I know when we were discussing CCL and online billing and all of these things, I think some of those pieces around tech access and how people prefer to receive content comes up at the board level. So I'm excited to read that. Thanks. And then I guess the other question I have, I know you said, broadly in times of change, people rank everything lower. And yeah, I think there's this fuzziness around policies, et cetera. But I don't want to discount it entirely. And it was one of our lower scoring areas. So in looking at the 2022 focus areas, that's not something that's highlighted as an area of focus. And I realize it's tricky because you can't play politics and comms. That's not at all the goal. But I am wondering, if there's some way that we can, you as a comms team, without getting into politics or boards or preference for candidates or board members, but could gather some more two-way information or data on policies that are out there or practices that are being taken. Because I think, for instance, our town hall meetings, that's such an exciting platform, but they're really structured in the way they take place, and it's a lot of information going out, and then not as much kind of discussion dialogues seeking information or input from the members. And so that could be.
It's definitely something that I'm hungry for too. It's been on my list to do focus groups since I started, but COVID kind of scuppered that. But I think that is something with this data that we now have, this baseline data that we now have, that I would like to pursue this year, just to dig into it a bit more, really have some conversations with members, and with those conversations, then come up with actionable plans for what we can do to improve.
Awesome. That's really exciting to hear.
Perfect. Ted, go ahead.
Thanks. A quick question on the awareness questions or slide that we put together. I've become more and more aware over the last 6 months of how important our peak power usage is, both from an LPEA standpoint, from an individual member standpoint. Is there a reason why we didn't get that particular question on the awareness slide? How aware are you of peak power charge or something like that? If there's not a good reason, can we do it in the future?
Yeah, Ted, it's always a struggle to try and ask all the things that we want to ask in a 10-minute survey. And on this one, even, we actually went a bit over the 10 minutes, which is not recommended, because people just start to, drop off. So we have in the past asked those questions, as I mentioned. What we're planning on doing is resurrecting them for the next survey, since we do have some baseline data in the past. So keeping the things we absolutely need to be measuring every year, but bringing back some of the old questions. This year, we did have to sacrifice some questions in order to be able to have time to do the member segmentation study. And we really wanted to fit that member segmentation study in.
Perfect, thank you. And then just 2 quick comments on just the overall process. I think it's fantastic that we do it. I think it's really important to have baseline and to look for room for improvement. But I also just want to throw a caution in there. I'm a super numbers guy, and I love charts and graphs and great colors. And I will say that the time I use them most is when the data is complicated and I want to convince somebody by making it look simple. There's a lot of places in here where you can look at a graph and it makes something look like a simple conclusion. And I would just caution, all of these readers, don't jump to conclusions without thinking very carefully about what that question might have been like, how it compares to other questions sort of on the same page. It's easy to say this was our low score, but think really carefully about why it might have been lower than others. So that was just a comment. And then the last comment is sort of this: scores go down in times of rapid change. And this is something I've noticed sort of in discussions with individuals and also in town halls that we've had. So when we're being aggressive and making changes as an organization, a lot of people are going to be dissatisfied Some of them are going to be dissatisfied because we are going too slow, and some of them are going to be dissatisfied because we're going too fast. And that's unique to times of rapid change. And, if we're not making change, we're just going to have, segmentation one way or the other. And so, in some cases, the fact that we have that type of dissatisfaction is an indicator that we're doing it right. We are in the middle to some extent, and have people who think we're going too fast and people who think we're going too slow. And so rather than thinking of that as a negative, again, it's statistics. So consider where it comes from. And, my opinion there would be that it's really not a negative. That's all. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Ted. Kirsten.
Yeah, quick back to Sue's question. Sue, I thought you asked, will we have another all-member survey? But I think the answer came back of, will we have this kind of a sample survey? Sue, were you asking, are we going to have an all-member survey?
Yes, I was.
Okay, I don't think that's the answer you answered, Hillary. I thought you just answered about surveys in general and these samples, that we'll be doing this kind of a sample survey every 2 years.
Right. You mean a survey that actually goes out to 100% of the membership?
Yes.
That was your question.
It's my understanding that has happened in the past. So I was wondering when we might be having another all-member survey.
This has not happened in the past, as far as I'm aware. I know, Dan, you've been here longer, maybe you would recall. But in my understanding, at least as far back as the surveys that I have in my desk, we've always only done the representative surveys.
Good. Thank you. Joe, go ahead.
Couple things. Some of the demographic information, I could see that being shared with, the hospital and the city and the county. Those statistics about, how the county is aging and losing young people, I think would certainly be of interest to a lot more folks. And this is probably the most comprehensive survey in the region about something like that. So maybe Jessica, when you meet with some of the folks, I just think it would be, there's some information in there that might surprise people. And I think it'd be good to share that among our cohorts. As far as, I'm looking through this, I see absolutely nothing that we can't share with the public. The idea of taking stuff out of context, no matter what we put out there, people will take it out of context. I like the idea of being totally transparent. I think, NRECA has a methodology that's long proved that their method is effective and accurate. I would really like either to maybe have a board discussion later about that, or maybe set up a subcommittee that would go over if we're going to edit this down. But I just don't see anything in there that is, would cause a problem. There's always going to be gadflies out there. We know who they are. And it's going to be a very small percentage of folks who are going to, who are going to try to do something nefarious with this. So I'm with Tim and Kirsten. I don't see anything in here that should be withheld from our membership.
Okay.
So I think that's totally fine, and we're happy to share it. I just want to make sure we maybe circle back with Graham to make sure we're not missing anything, because NRECA has some reservations about it. They've said other co-ops don't share the full reports, but if Graham doesn't see anything in there, then I think we can go ahead and post it.
Yeah, I'd just like to have some time to review our agreements. These were performed by third parties and not by us directly, so there may be some proprietary copyright information where it might not exactly be ours to share up front. There's some potential intellectual property here. So if I could have some time to review that, I'd appreciate that.
Well,
ahead, Ray.
we did pay for it, and there's polls done all the time. So I would view any of their intellectual property concerns with great skepticism.
Fair enough.
I was just
Go
gonna
ahead,
add,
Rachel.
if this does go to the public, I think Hillary's concern about, I think in particular because of the flip-flop in whatever it was, the methodology anomaly, like that, I think is something that somehow has to be captured in every single slide, like, every single graph that's out there, or it's the weighted pieces going out. Because I think if that's just, that will be a place folks get hung up on. And I'm just thinking about, for instance, next election cycle, and just how these numbers will just get slammed out there, and out of context or without that kind of methodology piece. That's just one example where I think there could be perhaps unintentional misperception created.
Well, I'm up for election, and I'm willing to take the darts on it. So just FYI.
Okay, go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, back to Joe's question about the demographics. Those numbers are just from the people that were surveyed, not the whole county. So there's the representation is can be skewed somewhat. So it's not representative of the whole membership.
In the demographic section, Dan, and apologize, I should have specified that. That is actually based on our entire membership demographics based on the census data. So it was a demographic data append that they did for us. And to your earlier point, Joe, that is data that a lot of the big institutions around town already have access to, especially as a member of the chamber. If you're a member of the chamber, you can access all of the census data for 2020. So we are by far the only organization around with that data. We're not the only organization, sorry.
All right, I'd like to offer my opinion on this subject. I think that we have more than met our public disclosure and transparency objectives by the depresentation in this meeting today. I second the idea that to simply put a PowerPoint presentation without the voiceover that Hillary provided would actually do more harm than good. Context is everything, and then these reports are subject to interpretation. In the case of this particular report, I think you could take any one of these slides out of context and twist it and distort it to serve an objective in any political direction. These are tools. These kinds of surveys are tools so that leadership and staff can make decisions about where to allocate budget, where to allocate time, where to allocate attention, where to allocate resources, so that we can improve on the quality of our services to our best potential, to our fullest potential. To just simply post this thing up and allow somebody to cherry pick for their own agenda, I think is opening ourselves up to number one, you lose the narrative altogether. It allows somebody to just hijack the entire narrative, and then number two, it'll go from what I think is fundamentally a very operational and tactical thing, and turn it into something that's very political, which it really shouldn't be. And so, for my own 2 cents here, I think we have met the transparency requirement, and I think I think we should not push this thing up. And my last thought on the subject is, if we are pushed, if we do elect to post this up, we'll still need a significant redaction or a significant expansion for some context, to make sure that the people who do take an interest in this stuff do interpret the data correctly. So that's my own opinion on the subject. Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, so I guess after Graham takes a look at this, I'd like to have another, maybe at our next meeting, have another discussion of this. Our ratings are really good overall. And again, I'm not worried about in political ramifications, and certainly an explanation of some sort, going into this is certainly appropriate. When we talk about meeting our obligations of what's available to the public, we're always helping ourselves if we make more available than saying, well, that's proprietary. When we say it's proprietary, that's when people get their, start throwing the out of context and reasoning that we're closed and not true cooperative directors and stuff. So I would like to see if we can discuss this again at the next meeting and come to a resolution about it.
Great, thanks, Joe. Okay, any further discussion on this matter? All right, so we are a bit over, but that's fine. This was a timely and important discussion. So let's go ahead and take a break, but let's if you guys are okay, let's keep it to 10 minutes. And so we'll see you guys at 11:20. Does that work for everybody? Terrific. All right, thank you. We'll see you at 11:20. Breaks over. We are on to agenda item number 5. So starting with the Finance and Audit Committee updates.
Thank you, John. The Finance and Audit Committee met on the 13th from 9 to 11. All members were present. Carl's already done a detailed review of the finances, so I won't go over that. But as he said, the December projections came in right on the money, within 20,000 of projected revenue. And so the year will end, it looks like, very close to what's been projected in the past few months. We spent most of our time on the cost of service study preliminary report provided by the EES consulting groups. I forget the two names of the consultants we talked to, but we spent most of our time with them reviewing the report and us asking questions. That report is out to everyone, right, Carl? Everyone has had a chance to see that?
Yes, it was sent out and it's also on the Google Drive, Bob.
Okay. And so the idea is that everyone has a chance to look at that. And I know you've responded to one email from Joe about questions or chance to respond. And there'll be time between now and when that report will be delivered and reported out to the full board in the March meeting. Are we speaking off the same page there, Carl? That's what you've said and what our plan is.
Absolutely. Yes. Thanks, Bob.
Yeah. So, it was, without doing commentary on the report, it seems to be very well done. There's a chance to do some tweaks and final precision work on it, but we'll be all seeing it in detail in March. Reach out with any questions to Carl. Then also we have the audit currently underway. I spoke with the lead auditor, Tammy Totsky, back in December. She was very pleased with how the audit was progressing, with the reports she's receiving, with cooperation from staff and so forth. And then she and her audit team, I think, when I talked to them in December, were planning to be on site late January. Any update on that, Carl? Is that still?
Yeah, we are planning for them to be visiting with us starting January 31st. Obviously, if something dramatic happens, COVID related, we might revisit that for remote work. But yeah, as it planned, they will be in our offices January 31st.
Very good. So that's still all on track as she had hoped for back in December. So that's good to hear. We'll all be seeing that later in the spring as the audit is completed and our Form 7 is completed in April. Nothing else big to report other than we will be, as we've said, revisiting those financial goals in April and discussing all the ways to incorporate the impacts of possible tri-state rate changes, as well as other power suppliers and everything else that might be flowing into the reality of our 2022-2023 budget year as it goes along. So that was our meeting this past month, and I'll leave it there unless there's any questions. Jim has his hand up.
Hey, Bob, was there a written report in the packet, or were you just giving a verbal?
Yeah, it's in the packet.
It's not mine. All right.
Yeah, and I sent my report out, Tim, because I didn't get it in on Friday, and so it may have missed one of the first publications, but I did send it to all the board because I didn't submit it until Monday, so my apologies for that.
All right, thanks.
Okay.
Okay.
Anything else for Bob? Okay. Well, appreciate that. Thank you. Moving on, policy committee update. Who's driving that? Ted, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll go for that one, John. Yeah, so approximately page 111 or 112 in the board packet, and I have a couple pages of information to review. The first page is sort of a step-by-step upcoming schedule of both actions by the Committee on Policies and expected participation from the full board. You'll probably remember as we started policy review, we were going to go kind of numerically, sequentially, 400 series, 300 series, 200, 100, with the expectation that occasionally policies would arise that needed to be addressed sort of out of that sequence. And so we're in the middle of one of those right now. Policy 105 deals with director elections and annual meeting voting, which is obviously imminent. And so we're making every effort to get any suggested or required revisions to that policy proposed and then adopted by the February board meeting. So I'm just going to kind of burn through the upcoming schedule, but it is in writing, and maybe keep track of it. I will, of course, send out email updates as we go along in places where there might be board participation and sort of deadlines for comment. But let's see, I'm already behind schedule because I say on January 15th, the COP should send out the suggested modifications for this policy 105. We're going to be a couple days late on that. I really didn't want to throw that in front of everybody just before this board meeting because it didn't require action at this board meeting. So you will all see an email and a link to a editable red line version of policy 105 this evening. Dig into it as soon as you can. You'll see January 27th deadline for director comments. This should look very similar to what we went through on the 400 series policies a couple months ago. We will take comments either on that red line document, which is probably preferred because it keeps it all in one place. It allows other directors to see your comments and not make the same comment if they don't feel it's necessary, or even reply to those comments. But also, as previous, the committee will take comments from directors completely separate via email, even via phone call if it's if it's somewhat complicated and you don't want to type stuff out. We'll be sure and collect and collate all those comments so that they can be publicly addressed at the next COP meeting, which is scheduled for February 3rd. So between that deadline and February 3rd, it will be our goal to revert to everyone who's made a comment and have any necessary discussion to clarify maybe what those comments are. Some of them may be so simple and easy to adopt that we'll just go ahead and roll those into our recommendation. Let's see. yeah, so February 3rd, Committee on Policies will have that meeting, and we'll put together our final recommendation with the expectation that that can get voted on at the February 16th meeting. Also on our February 3rd meeting, and so we're cramming some stuff in here, trying to get back on pace. We're going to dive into the 300 series policies. And so before the February 16th meeting, and I've got it approximately on February 9th, the board will receive a full red line document on policy 300 modifications. And then we'll roll into that process again with the hope and expectation that in the March meeting, we can actually have a full vote on the 300 series. So that's our upcoming schedule. I put this together thinking I'll just put together, a couple of months and it'll be very simplistic. Turns out to not be. There's a fair bit of work to do here. But when we designed this schedule, we really were trying to work around the other busiest times for the board. So we're hoping that we have a little bit of breathing room here, even though I know we're going to get into some other topics. So do your best to participate in the process. We had great participation in the 400 series, and as long as we get that, I think we'll do an excellent job at doing the necessary revisions on these policies and keeping them properly updated. That's the upcoming schedule. I probably stop briefly to entertain any questions or comments on that before I move into the second part of the Committee on Policies report, which is around policy 108, disclosure of information. I don't see any questions, so I'll quickly move on. So this will be on the next page of the board packet. I have it on 113. So policy 108, disclosure of personal records. Initially, we wouldn't have considered addressing this until the 100 series, but because it's been brought up by more than one director and more than one time, we sort of felt like it needed attention, needed to be addressed. So thanks to the full committee, we made extra time in our last meeting to review the policy, and had Graham do some in-depth research on it. I'm not going to go through the document here. Graham's memo, it's pretty complete. And so I'll really just jump to the conclusion. After discussing what we currently have in policy 108 versus industry standard, if you will, NRECA has done quite a bit of research and made recommendations on how we handle this disclosure. We had unanimous agreement in the policy committee that we don't need to change policy 108 related to disclosure at this point. So that's all I'm presenting at this point. I have nothing more, John, if there's no questions on that. I see, well, go ahead. I see questions. Rachel, you want to go ahead?
Mine's super easy. I really appreciated this memo, Graham. Just want to say it was well-researched, easy to read through. It's great to see your supporting documentation. And then where will this, because this issue has come up multiple times during my short tenure here, does this document get stored in, I think there's like a attorney reports or something like that in the policies folder? Is that where we could find something like this in the future?
Grant, will you tackle that?
Yeah, Janelle, we're posting these attorney memos on the Google Drive, right?
I post them all in Director Point.
Director, okay, so we'll build out a Google Drive photo that sort of has an archive of past memos. I'll go through our corporate archive and see what all I can dig up out of past board packets and stuff. And so I'll try and expand that as I have time available. But I obviously have pretty easy access to all the memos that I've generated. So I'll get those to Janelle, and we'll get a Google Drive folder for attorney memos set up. Myself,
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel, for the positive feedback and for the the very well placed compliment to Graham's work. I have a full email folder of replies that Graham gives to me because the information is always so thorough and well researched. So thanks for that. Tim, you have your hand up.
Thanks. Yeah, you had a timeline for this 105. Is that, I couldn't tell, is that delayed because you didn't, I mean, what's the time frame that we have to?
So the only thing that's changed on the
to
schedule,
to see the document that you want to present.
yeah, so sorry, the only thing that I expect to change on the upcoming schedule is the date that we've already missed. And so the suggested modifications document will come out this evening, Tim, and I don't expect to change the January 27th deadline. There's a lot of work to be done between Committee on Policies and individual directors that make comments before we get to this February 3rd meeting where we need to solidify that. So yeah, it is just a truncated time frame. I apologize for that, but we need to do our best to stay on it.
And Ted, if you don't mind, I'll take a little bit of responsibility for that delay. When we left the committee meeting, that I had some further to-dos so we circulated an additional red line where the committee members sort of made some further adjustments over the weekend, and so we're just sort of getting the full red lines coming out of committee now. So I'll take responsibility for not having that ready to go on the 15th, just by sort of having some further to-dos after our committee meeting.
So is that what we should expect, is a week for review of changes and going forward?
No, not necessarily, Tim. I think I think this is one policy. So certainly when we give you the 300 series, it won't be expected that a week is enough to review and make comment. We do feel like this is a pretty straightforward review. The policy is not short. It's probably 3 or 4 pages, but the content changes are pretty much keeping up with legal and some clarification stuff. So yeah, it's a great question. I mean, absolutely. We're going to try and give the appropriate amount of time to be able to do the review. If it doesn't work, and if there are complaints that I just didn't have enough time to review this, then we'll revisit that. With this particular policy, with the elections coming up, we do have a pretty tight deadline now.
All right, thank you, Ted.
Thanks, Tim. Kirsten?
Yeah, so I just wanted to go back to 108 and just make sure I am going to say things correctly. So somebody asked me what the CEO's salary is, and I say, you have to look at our Form 990. You can get there by Googling LPEA Form 990. You'll get right there. But I'm sorry, I can't tell you out loud. Is that the correct? Is that too much guidance telling them how to get to Form 990?
No, that's, as Kirsten, I'd say that is our sort of current policy, right? And maybe an easier way is just to say to go to our website and put Form 990 in the search bar, right? Because we directly post our Form 990s on the website, which my research was that as of at least 2015 NRECA's survey was that only about a third of co-ops did that. So we are one of the 1/3 that are transparent enough to post our Form 990 directly on our website, as opposed to having someone go through the IRS or whatnot to get to it. So probably the fastest way is just to go to our website and put Form 990 in the search bar.
Well, yeah, that's 2 steps. The other one's 1 step. So I don't know that it's the fastest way, Graham. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks.
Any other comments for Ted and the team? Okay, let's push on. Thanks, guys. That is hard and thankless work, and we appreciate you doing it. I'm glad you're doing it. All right, on to 5C, appoint delegate and alternate NRECA, CREA, and WU annual meetings.
I'll take that, John. So yes, it's that time of year to get ready for annual meeting season. So we have some deadlines to get our delegates appointed for Western United and CREA, because those meetings are going to take place in Denver on February 14th. Just for recollection, our current members are Holly is our delegate to those, and Sue is our alternate. And so if we want to renominate, or if they're not interested in serving in that position again or whatever, we'd sort of need to reappoint those. And then the NRECA is March 6th in Nashville, but there is a Zoom option for attending the NRECA. So I would just maybe need nominations and probably move forward along that way.
Terrific. All right, Kirsten.
Graham, I misunderstood. I think I misunderstood what you said. Did you say that we've already done the delegates for CREA and the alternates?
No, those are just our last year's. Just let you know who is currently sitting in that position. So, you know, we have not done the 2022 delegation yet.
Okay, which is different from the board members. Okay.
Yes. So think of this is a membership meeting as opposed to a board meeting. So, you know, this is you know, for you, to use you as a personal example, right? You are a delegate to the Fast Track annual meeting, correct? Even though Tim is our board delegate. So when we voted as a shareholder at Fast Track, that was you as opposed to Tim. This is similar corporate function.
Thank you.
Great. Sue, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I'd like to nominate both Kirsten for NRECA and then Holly again for the CREA and the Western United. And I will not be able to go to the CREA annual meeting in February, so I would like to not be up for that position this year.
Terrific. Thank you. Can I have a second for Sue's?
I'll second.
Thank you. Okay, so now we have a so we actually have it on the floor. So let's we'll go through that process. So let's have a discussion about that. I think probably certainly the two people who have been nominated should at least chirp up. So Kirsten, go first.
So mine was for the NRECA. That's the beginning of March. I don't have any conflicts. I'd be happy to represent. I would be doing it virtually.
Terrific. Thank you. Holly, how about you?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear what Kirsten said. Are you saying that you can't make?
She said she's good to go. No, she's good to go.
Oh, okay. I had thought about possibly, because I'm already registered to be up there in Denver for that weekend, so I do not have any problem serving in those capacities, but I'm very willing to share if anybody else would like to go to CREA or Western United. Either way, I'm good. Also, I do have interest though, Kirsten, in serving on that NRECA meeting as well. So I don't know if it's kosher to nominate yourself, but I am more than willing also to you know, bypass that. I really am fascinated by the process. So I'm good either way.
Yeah,
I just want to roll with it.
I'll chime up on under Robert's rules for this board. It's kosher to nominate yourself. So.
Okay, so are we doing, so Graham, help out here. So the motion was just for the delegate. Then we can either amend that or we can just do a separate waive for the alternate. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think we could do a separate slate for the alternate. Yeah.
Okay, so let's if you guys are good to go, if anybody else wants to weigh in on the subject.
The motion is people, and I'd like to withdraw. So I would like to amend the motion to be nominating Holly for the NRECA delegate and unnominating Kirsten for the NRECA delegate.
Okay. Well, maybe I think Sue, are you okay amending your request?
Yes, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
I think as an alternate though, I would like to see someone new be put in that area. I know John Lee in the past has maybe expressed interest in that. It may be something that one of the other directors would like to be an alternate on both of those.
Good, thank you. Okay, so the amendment proposal is for Holly, and correct me if I'm, is for Holly to do all three as the primary.
That's not how I amended it.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm just echoing it. I'm not nudging.
Yeah, I don't. Maybe I missed the first one was WUE, Holly.
I had Kirsten for NRECA and Holly for CREA and WU.
Oh, and both. Okay, I missed the both.
And my understanding was you said I would rather Holly did NRECA. That means okay, and so therefore, to restate, Sue's amended proposal is Holly to be the primary delegate for NRECA, CREA, and WU. That is the current standing proposal for discussion. Rachel.
Can we, what are the dates of these? Like, is there a slide in here somewhere?
I don't have a slide in there. The CREA and Western United are both on February 14th. They're joined together. So so it isn't a conflict for the same person. As a matter of fact, it's much more efficient for the same person to represent both. NRECA is March 6th in Nashville, but there is a Zoom option. So by committing to be the delegate, you are not committing to go to Nashville. So you can attend that remotely.
Okay. And then to Sue's point, John Lee, does this interest you?
Sure. It seems like it's already addressed.
And so I think the current motion is to have Holly as the official delegate to all three of these, and then we would need a subsequent motion to have alternate delegates for each of these as a follow-up motion after we vote on Holly's. Yeah.
Okay. Holly, go ahead.
John Lee, would you like to serve as the official representative? I'm more than willing to share. And also, you guys, there's a cybersecurity class happening on that Sunday before the all-day Western United CREA meeting on Monday. So I'm hitting that class for sure because it's kind of a timely topic.
Okay. So
just to sweeten the pot.
Let's. So I think that let's have
okay.
So I think the offer here was for Holly. I think John, would you like NRECA or the CREA WU? Because I think we'd like to see. I think diversity would be incrementally preferable.
Yeah, I'm not looking to be busy, but if it makes sense for us to represent it, if Holly's there, like Graham said, on efficiency's sake, and represented it, then
so
I'll do whatever.
Can you do the March? So the original proposal was for Kirsten. Why don't we? Would you be up for doing the March 6th one, the NRECA one? You can do it by Zoom or in person.
Yes, I can do that. But I thought Holly expressly wanted to learn in our
NRECA. All right, so I mean, we're sort of getting far away from Robert Rules of Order here. Holly, what do you want to do? Do you want to split it or you want to take all three?
My preference going into it was to do the NRECA one just for my own learning capacity. I am willing to share that. And I would be more than willing to serve as the alternate to the Western United and CREA and support John Lee if he is up there and he wants to do that.
All right, I'll take that nomination for Western United and CREA.
There we go. Okay. So to keep this all really simple, so Sue, if you want to amend yours, I think we're all green lit here for Holly to run NRECA and John Lee to run CREA and Western United.
I am good with that. Who are we going to then have as an alternate for the NRECA?
We can have that conversation
In a minute? Okay.
in a minute. I think
Okay.
I don't
I'm
think there's
good
a
with-
lot of strong feelings. Okay, so
Sure.
as amended, so then Sue's on the record for the amendment with John Lee as a representative for CREA and the Western United, and Holly for NRECA. All in favor of those appointed delegates, raise your hand, say aye.
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 Excellent. All opposed? All abstained? Terrific. The motion carries. Thank you. All right, now we have to do alternates. Same thing. You guys just want to flip flop? Anybody else want to get in there? Great. Can I get a motion for the two of them to flip?
So moved by Kohler.
There we go. Kohler.
Second that.
I heard Bob. All right, any discussion? Okay. All in favor of the proposal? And say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? To no. All abstained. Okay, motion carried. Thank you. All right, congratulations. Let's move on. Election Supervisory Committee appointments.
Thanks, John. Just, so we need to reappoint all of our election supervisory committee members. I have contacted all of the members who served on last year's election supervisory committee, and they've all agreed to be renominated. So that would be Mason Carpenter in District 1, Cheryl Ayers in District 2, Bill Green in Ross Park in District 3, and Bill Green in District 4. Dan, you have a question?
You're on mute.
You're muted.
I move that we reappoint the election supervisory members.
Okay, Ted seconds. Okay, any discussion on this? That's how it's done. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All opposed? All abstained? Excellent, motion carries. Look at that, rock and roll. All right, well, thank you guys for a little bit of hustle here. We are more than caught up on our agenda. Jessica, are we still in sort of the same format with Matt's availability as it's been in the past?
Yes, he will call in at 1 p.m.
At 1 p.m. Okay, terrific. Tim, looks like you had your hand raised. So, go ahead.
Another question about what was included in the board packet. I did not see the names of these delegates or anything in the packet. So could you send them to us?
Yes, I'll send them to you.
I think going forward, it would be helpful to have that information ahead of time before. So maybe for next year, please.
Agreed. Okay, thank you. All right, so so we have two options. We can either take our lunch break 30 minutes and then pick up as we've been doing in the past, or we can push to 12:30 and crank through item number 9, which are our reports. I, for one, going strong, so I just assume try to get through some of the reports until it's time to break at 12:30. Anybody feel strongly otherwise? Okay, then let's push on. So we're gonna we'll pick this up at with agenda item number 9, starting with the reports. That would be the attorney report. So Graham, you keep fucking.
All right. Thank you. So just refer to my attorney report in the packet. I mean, obviously with sort of the holidays and the end of the year, it is kind of, there's a lot of wrap up on there. I will say that there is a bullet point that begins with the word finish. If anybody would like to discuss that bullet point, I'm happy to do that in executive session, but should not discuss that in public session. And the other sort of thing to kind of highlight is obviously the legislative session is kicking off and things are really starting to sort of roll along. So that's really kind of going to be coming in on top of all of this. I guess if Holly, as our CREA representative, is closely monitors that too. But when things are coming up and you have questions, feel free to reach out to me about questions on pending legislation. And otherwise, I'll just turn it over to questions and start with Joe.
Yeah, on the bullet point you mentioned, can we discuss that in this executive session, or do we have to?
I think I can answer questions on it, just sort of briefly. Yeah, but that is the resolution was confidential on that. So, yeah. I mean, it's sort of presuming anybody has any questions on it. So, Sue.
Thank you. Personally, I'd like to see your report expounded a little bit more. I mean, the bullet points are okay, but they really don't tell us anything. One specific question I have is, what is the Power Vision loan? Okay, and I'll let Carl sort of kick in on that too, but that's our new, the new format of where CFC is financing us in a larger block of rolling credit for our sort of, so we can have more, we have kind of have a longer horizon on our capital credits, capital projects development. And so that is, that's, I believe Carl gave a presentation to you on that a few months ago. And I think so, I'm not 100% sure because that would be Carl that would have done that, but why don't I just kick that over to you now, Carl?
Yeah, I think we actually discussed it at a Finance and Audit Committee meeting, but it's a $50 million credit line that we can draw down on for capital projects. So it stops us having to, as we did in the past, go out and borrow, 20 million or something, and then immediately begin to service that debt, even though we wouldn't spend all of that money right away. We only need to borrow exactly what we need as the projects come up.
Okay, thank you. And up at the top, or toward the top, what is CTP, BDP, and related strategies?
All right, CTP is contract termination payment, and BDP is buy down payment. So those are our potential partial buyout and full buyout litigations at FERC.
Do you have more, Sue?
Oh, I did. It froze on my end. As you know, I'm having internet issues. Also, the materials from the DEI consultants. Again, it would be really helpful if you expounded a little more so that we didn't have all these questions, or I don't have all these questions.
Sure. So that we were offered some DEI consulting that was paid for. Hillary, do you recall who?
So these are, we brought this up previously, and so we can work to add more details to this, but this was something that NRECA, through another cooperative, offered us a free service of doing a DEI analysis. So it's free to us, and we've joined that, and it's just started. So we'll have more details on that the further along we go, and we'll report back on that at another board meeting. But good question.
What's DEI stand for?
Diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Okay, go ahead, Tim.
The dark fiber lease agreement, is that sort of like a general purpose, or is it for a specific vendor?
That is general purpose, right? So the idea was that under our broadband goal, we sort of formalize a policy and a rate and sort of some standardized documents that would apply across the board, partially because SB 107 requires us to be non-discriminatory. So Dan and Ryan and I are working sort of in the initial drafting of trying to get that lease together to come to figure out what we need it to look like on our end. So I was doing some preliminary research on dark fiber lease agreements generally, and trying to sort of build a template for us to use. And then we're kind of testing it. Ryan and Dan were sort of helping me kind of cross-test that again, cross-test that, if you will, against what we're actually need to sort of implement on our end.
Great. So it would be a template for potentially lots of use. But when, maybe this isn't a question for you, but it brings up a question, which is, so we would need to approve a rate, it seems like, right? As a board, right? Isn't, I don't know, is that under, maybe the question is, under what rate or other method do we set the costs that go along with this? And is that done at the board level or staff level, or how is that going to work, and what will be the timing of that?
So the idea, we were sort of trying to work through that. I mean, first off, like Dan and Ryan and I were just trying to figure out what the kind of cost capture would even be to sort of build a rate together and stuff like that. And I think, Dan, what were our thoughts on how we would get this? I mean, I will say this: as I've reviewed the law, it doesn't sort of fit within the mandatory electricity tariff that's covered by the law. So we don't have like real clear guidance. So like the Colorado Cooperative Electric Association law says that these electrical rates have to go through the board. And so it sort of makes sense that the board approve broadband rates as well. But I mean, obviously it's sort of, the idea is we have to kind of, not unlike electrical rates, staff needs to sort of, figure out what the costs are that go into that rate before we could present them to you. Does that sort of summarize it, Dan?
Yeah, and Tim, I guess I sort of looked at it very similar to our pole attachment rate that we charge. I mean, that's not something we necessarily bring before the board. We can include the board on, what we're doing, what we're up to, what we're thinking, and all that. But from what Graham's found and what we've looked at, it doesn't necessarily need board approval, doesn't necessarily need a 30-day public notification period, but we certainly want to have it on the website and other things as well. I guess we haven't gotten to that necessarily to that point yet.
All right, well, it seems like it's not completely clear whether that should be through a tariff or not. So I'm just reiterating what I heard. So if I'm wrong, correct me. But and I would just say that before those rates are published, whether it has to go through, if it doesn't have to go through the tariff process that we have at the moment, I would appreciate that the board has a chance to look at those and understand what they are and have some sort of presentation, which I'm sure you probably had planned, but if you get to a point where you have a time frame for that, I would also be really interested in that. Thanks.
And Tim, just to your point, we'll work on that.
Thank you. That's all I have for you, Graham. Thanks.
Any other questions?
Okay. All right. Thanks, Graham. Appreciate it. All right. Let's crank through a few director reports before we hit 12:30. So we'll start with Roundup Foundation.
I'm doing that one this month, John.
Go for it.
Okay, so we had board packet somewhere close to 117. Roundup board meeting December 27th, and you guys can read this, but I'll hit the highlights, at least as I perceive the highlights. You know, we always review the financial summary. The reserves are still relatively large compared to historical averages, and so the Roundup Foundation is giving itself leeway to give away slightly more than comes in each month to try and pick away at that. My comment there is that there's really no reason for us to be holding on to this money in reserve when it can be used to be working for the betterment of our members. So we continue to strive to do that. Specifically in this month, we were presented with 3 grant opportunities. We funded all 3 at the full request. We actually did exceed the monthly amount in the Roundup category, but we actually didn't equal the monthly buildup in the educational fund from retired capital credits. So you know, one of the things we need to continue to always do in Roundup is outreach and marketing, not only to our members to get the money in, but also to our community to get the money out. And we're going to, that's one of the agenda topics for our upcoming board retreat. And so we'll be looking at doing a better job at that. We call it the marketing report, but this is basically like how we're doing at getting members involved in Roundup. And so over the year, we have 113 new Roundup accounts. So new people have signed up. A few people have terminated their accounts. I don't have great visibility into that to know whether they just unchecked the box or maybe their account doesn't exist anymore or something like that. Let's see. I mentioned the 3 grant applications. You can see them there. We do have new officer elections coming up on January 31st. We have a board retreat coming up in February. At this last meeting, we discussed possible topics. We also gave special acknowledgement to Christy Smith as an outgoing member from District 1, and as is tradition, the Roundup Foundation donated $250 to her charity of choice. Big apologies that I didn't take note of that. Christy mentioned it at the meeting. And we had a new District 1 Roundup Foundation board member, Leonard Martinez, was with us as a guest, and Leonard will be a full board member at the January meeting. I mentioned that the minutes from November are included, and then I realized that I made a pretty bad copy and paste error, and I just included the agenda from the December meeting rather than the minutes from the November meeting. If anybody raises their hand right now, I'll be sure and email those minutes out to the full board. If nobody raises their hand, I'll assume that, there we go, I got a hand. So the board will see an email with November minutes coming out. I saw 2 hands. Okay, we got that. I should also point out, it's not in the text, but we did hold a special meeting on December 29th or 30th to discuss personnel issue. And that's where the potential for having LPEA board discussion came onto the agenda, but that was resolved to the extent that it's not there's no discussion, didn't rise to the level of needing to be addressed by LPEA board. That's all I've got for the report. I'll entertain questions and I'll be sure and get those minutes out to everybody. I see Joe's hand. You're on mute, Joe.
Yeah, I didn't raise that to get the minutes. I don't need the minutes, but
I got two other hands, so they're coming out.
Oh, okay, all right. Just a suggestion with, it seems like we're, when I first was on the Roundup board, there was a kind of a special grants program. And that, I think it was because of COVID, that kind of fell away. And I don't know if the, the buildup in the money is because we stopped doing that. So that might be something for the board, Roundup board to take a look at. But just an idea to throw out is if and I don't know what the bylaws are with that, but if there is a specific project, community-wide project that money could go to, I don't know, maybe it's childcare or physicals for, low-income people. I'm just wondering if there might be some sort of a, instead of just, throwing more money at the people who are requesting funds, to set something up that the Roundup board could set aside funds for some, kind of long-range program. And maybe that's for, board retreat idea.
No, I think they're great comments, Joe. And I certainly don't think any of that falls outside of sort of the bylaws or articles for Roundup. And I'll take that concept into to our retreat and just as some more food for thought in terms of how we do figure out to donate more broadly to our community.
Great. Thank you. Any other comments for Ted and the Roundup team? Okay, thank you. All right, on to Tri-State. Kohler, you're up.
So my report is in the packet. It was a pretty routine meeting this month. So most of I'd say the heavy lifting was done in executive session. I do have a couple highlights that I'd like to talk about just real quick. One of them was that we did approve the extension of the open season. And the main drive behind that was Jemez Electric Co-op. And Jemez has 10 different Indian tribes in their co-op. And New Mexico passed some legislation that had the potential to kind of break up the co-op. And this is one of the ways they think that they could put it all together and satisfy all the requirements of the legislation, as well as keep their co-op intact. And I think what they're really trying to go for is to get 20 megawatts. So that will reopen up. I don't know the exact date on that. Then November, the financials, and we're a month behind when we go over the financials, but November was the worst month for Tri-State of the year. And unlike LPEA, Tri-State did not have a very pretty year. It showed a loss of right around 9 million, but then when you consider that we used quite a big chunk of deferred income, the loss was quite a bit bigger. So it'll be challenging going forward this year and getting things corrected, and another 2% rate reduction coming up in March. So we'll have our work ahead of us to get this done. I think one of the biggest things that is hurting them financially is the slowdown of sales. Member sales, as far as megawatt hours, I think is going to be off about 7 to 12% for 2021. So it's going to be challenging. They did set up the rate committee. The rate committee will start its first meeting in February. And that rate committee is open to directors on this board if you would like to listen in once they go with a phone thing. And it might be to where there's a part of it, our delegate is Jessica. And if there's something that she might find that everybody would be interested in, she can probably let you know and you could listen into it. And we'll get a schedule out to you when we know more. And then just a few things about the big fire in Boulder. Fortunately, it was not an electric started fire. But one of the things that it did do is it took down one of the substations. You know, it's an XL substation that provides power to one of their compressing stations. And what was happening is the pressure on the gas system for pretty much a lot of the Front Range was dropping. If it gets too low, they have to shut the whole system down. And unlike an electrical shutdown, you just don't turn it back on. What you have to do with the gas is you have to go and shut down every single meter. And then when you get the gas built back up, you have to have a certified person go and check each home or each pilot light or each business before the meter is turned back on, and then light the pilot lights. So that could have been just a major disaster, something that could have taken 3 to 6 weeks to correct. So what XL did do is ask Tri-State to have Mountain Parks do some rolling blackouts. And Dwayne said he's never had to do rolling blackouts in his career until this year, or until 2021, and this is the second time. So he had it in the Valentine's Day weekend, and then with this fire to do that. The rolling blackouts lasted about 90 minutes. And fortunately, Mountain Parks was able to do it without too much damage to their members. Also, 2 of the Tri-State employees did lose all their possessions in their homes. So that was a sad thing. Other than that, I'll take questions. I think that's kind of the highlights I wanted to share with you. Joe?
Yeah, Kirsten had mentioned about attending, tri-state meetings. And I see on here that there's a meeting February 2nd. Is there a Zoom option for that? Do you know, Kohler?
Well, February is not a good month because February is going to be strategic planning, and that's all done in executive session. We will have a real brief board meeting at the end of that on Wednesday. I think that is the 2nd on Wednesday. And yes, there is an option to do that. I believe that, and Jessica, you can correct me, but I think you have to go through Jessica to get the link from Tri-State. And if that's incorrect, I'll find out. And you can go to that if you want to. It'll be a very brief one. What I would suggest, and going forward, is if you can, I think the committee meetings are where really the meat of the meeting happens. And the Finance and Audit Committee meeting, I think, would be very beneficial for all the directors on this board. And also kind of the second half of the E&O Committee. And that's where they do their department reports as far as generation, marketing, and transmission. I think that would be of interest. So I can get you some more schedules, going forward as far as that goes, but I don't think you'd be too impressed by what happens in February.
Yeah, just we can do it by Zoom. That'd be great. I don't think it's worth the expense of driving down there and doing all that, but I would like to.
Well, and they actually don't do Zoom. It's all telephone. There's no video that goes on with it, but it actually runs really smooth. So we can get you connected so you don't have to go there. It is expensive to get there. And Carl, I see your hand is up. I don't know if you have comments with that. No, he took his
Sorry,
hand
Carl.
down.
Just to reiterate your point, for Finance and Audit Committee, anyone who's interested in going, please contact me and I can hook you up with the details to dial in.
Thank you, Carl. Appreciate that.
Kohler, I just said there's actually a link to register for the board meetings, and then you're given a special, I think, code, because I actually have to use a special code to dial in that only I can use. So I've just sent a link for board meeting registration, and it actually includes any of our members who'd like to attend. They can also register and listen into the board meetings. And I thought, Carl, that was the same for the committee meetings.
Yeah, you're probably right, Jessica, and that would be more efficient than me doing them piecemeal. So thank you.
I didn't think that the committee meetings were open to the general public. I'll have to check on that. I know they are open to the directors and the member staff, but I don't think that one's open to the general public. And yes, you can get that link, but you want to do it ahead of time too, because they go through some approval thing. You don't want to wait until the meeting starts and and then hit your link.
And
So
is it
thank you
on,
for that input.
and are the meetings like on the first Monday of the month, or what's their schedule?
No, well, usually on Monday, and the schedule's a little different this next year, and I can get that schedule out to you, but Monday afternoon starting at 3 o'clock is the executive committee. Then Tuesday, it starts off with at the E&O committee first thing in the morning at 8, and then external affairs at 10:30, and then finance starts at 1:30. Finance usually goes the longest, and it usually will go till about 4 o'clock or 5. And then on Wednesday, the third day, is the board meeting, and it starts at 9, and it varies on how long it goes. And I can get a schedule out because it'll be different. And then once a quarter, all the meetings are virtual. So everybody's virtual, including the directors. Holly, you got your hand up?
Yeah, Kohler, thank you so much for your report. They're always pretty fascinating, and you do a ton of work. I really want to acknowledge that because, you know, it sounds like many days of meeting and, you know, being present. And I have a lot of thoughts on this, and I'm trying to nail them all down. The slowdown of sales, what percentage was that, did you say, sir?
On the megawatt hours, I don't have an exact amount because we don't have December, but we're expecting between 7 and 12% reduction
Okay.
in member sales.
And from what I've been reading in the depositions, it looks like that's kind of a trend. Is that fair to say?
I don't know if that, I would say the majority of co-ops are also down on their megawatt hours. I haven't heard it referred to as a trend before. I think a big part of it is oil and gas has not recovered. That one is very clear, and I think that hits a lot of the co-ops.
I struggle with this for myself, and basically, you know, in the way I look at all this, it's kind of it's my job and my duty to try to the best of my ability to understand, you know, this process that Tri-State's going through, because no matter what the results of our three-pronged strategy, you know, we're intimately tied to this long-term financial forecasting. So it seems it just seems interesting to me that so much of the information that comes out about like the electricity resource plan and stuff has got redacted information. And, you know, I understand strategy session being mostly an executive session, but, you know, we as an entity and an organization, as a member of this tri-state cooperative, are also, you know, responsible to some degree for the long-term plan that they execute. And so I don't know if this is the appropriate place to ask some of the questions that have come up in my mind out of reading the depositions that are occurring right now. But maybe, I don't know, I'm struggling with that because I think that, you know, we are tied to that. So, you know, I would like to know how we can arm you with, you know, the best knowledge going forward when you're representing LPEA in those discussions, because when I read the depositions, they very clearly say that we, via you, are also responsible for the path forward. So I just want to support you, sir.
I appreciate that support. I think one of the things about executive session for strategy and stuff is it's a little bit different ballgame than what the LPEA's co-op is. And that is, it's very, very competitive. Give you an idea, some of the transmission stuff that we're looking for on the eastern slope is real competitive as far as Excel goes and some of the other takers. And it really does have to be in executive session. What I do is share what I can with you on our drive, and that can't be shared other than with you. So that has a lot of it. And then all I can say is that, yeah, it's your representative to Tri-State that's got to be the one to go in there and represent LPEA. So I do put in the time, and I try to do the best I can to be fair for both entities. Okay. Kirsten?
Yeah, thanks, Kohler. Thanks for the report. Joe, I appreciate you bringing up and your willingness to attend. I agree with Kohler that February will just be the only part you can see is the board meeting, and that's just going to be really rudimentary. But sign up for March, and I'm thinking, Kohler, that maybe once you get that schedule out, maybe we could each sign up for at least a committee meeting or two, because it is our biggest expense, and understanding how, and we are a member, and we encourage active members. So I want each of us to attend. And when we talk about some of those other things we talked about earlier this morning about competency and effectiveness, when we talk about that as a group, maybe we can put these in as a goal. Each director attend once every year or 2 years or something like that. So I want to put that on the to-do list for the future. Thank you, Kohler. Thank you, Joe.
And I'll get that schedule out sometime this week. I don't see any other questions, John, so I'll turn it back to you.
Perfect, thanks. All right, can we do fast track in in 6 minutes? Or punt it to the other side?
Yeah, I mean, I can give my report. It's in the packet. It's in my packet anyway. And it's fairly self-explanatory. I will also give a shout out to the staff, Carl, and others who helped fast track to find, to help with the financials in light of the accountant that left the company earlier in 2021. And I believe they also helped to search for and find the one that was hired and begins work in January. So financials should be more consistent and forthcoming as they were for a long time. Probably February, March at the latest. Brainstorm and Futurum got, and I think I've reported that before, someone bought those assets out of bankruptcy, and Fast Track was made good on made whole on all of its outstanding arrears that were with Brainstorm, and also got paid some portion of the legal fees that were incurred in the bankruptcy proceedings. There were a few questions that Kirsten asked by email. I sent those out. So if anyone still has any questions on that, let me know. There was some info in there from the Colorado Broadband Office about broadband grant funding. I put that in there just kind of so people see. To me, it was a very kind of one of the clearest presentations of where's all this money coming from and how is it going to be utilized. So hopefully that was helpful. And I'll stop there if there's any questions. Three minutes.
Nicely done. All right. Can anybody beat Tim's 3 minutes and squeeze in CREA or Western United? All right, Holly, let's see it. Ready, go.
All right. Well, there has been no monthly meeting or no meeting of CREA since the last meeting, so there is no written report. Time.
Wow.
Nah, just kidding.
Okay.
I was thinking though of maybe taking all those emails and just consolidating them and including even something in the report next time. So like Kirsten did. Your turn,
Perfect.
Kirsten.
No meeting, nothing to report.
On Western. Nice. Okay, that's impressive. All right. Well, then everybody's going to get 3 extra minutes of lunch. We will see you back here at 1 p.m. sharp. So we can go. That's when Matt will. No, that's We'll just see you back at 1 p.m. sharp, and then we'll do the public attorney update and then drop into executive session. Thanks very much, guys. We'll see you at 1. Welcome back. So we are ready to go start. I think we're going to start, as we have done in the past, with the public attorney update, and then we'll head on into executive session. And I think we're going to make a slight tweak to how we have handled Kohler's involvement, but we'll get to that. Why don't we wait? Is everybody here? Yeah, John's not. Let's give John another minute. Great. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Matt. Why don't you give us the public update?
Sure. Thanks. Good to see you all. Few kind of key updates. Maybe we'll start with FERC. Flip to the Colorado PUC. Should be pretty brief, and then can take any questions. So first, big update on FERC. Direct testimony in the CTP litigation was filed on earlier this month, and we've kind of got two general methodologies that are out there. Tri-State has proposed a methodology, and then certain members have proposed a different methodology, leading to different exit fees for the respective members. The next step in that case is that answer testimony will be due on February 4th, and then the case will continue to move forward. So got a sense of where different parties are from taking a look at that testimony. The BDP remains in settlement procedures before FERC, still in front of the same ALJ, continuing to work through that process with other members in Tri-State to see if we can reach a constructive resolution there on that item. And then on the PUC side, kind of late break-in, but I am aware that Tri-State settled its electric resource plan proceeding. That settlement came in late last night. It's slated to be in front of an administrative law judge early next month. But from what I understand, it was a unanimous comprehensive settlement amongst all the parties to the proceeding. So certainly something we can dive into the details of in executive session if there's questions, or happy to field any other types of questions on any of those matters right now while we're in the public session, to the extent that they're appropriate to answer.
Terrific. Go ahead, Kirsten.
Yeah, on a high level matter, on a non-executive level, can you speak about the ERP? Was it the method that they were doing that was being contested, and that they've agreed to do it a certain way? What was the deal there?
Yeah, sure. So this was the first time that Tri-State had been subjected to fully litigated electric resource planning, or integrated resource planning, as it's called a lot of other places. The investor-owned utilities go through this process every 4 years. Essentially, you put out, there's two phases to the process. You put out, your modeling inputs and assumptions, and also, any sort of proposed accelerated retirements of existing generators as part of your phase 1 case. And that goes through full litigation. The settlement relates to the phase 1 portion of it. The next step in the process will be to go to a phase 2 competitive solicitation, and that competitive solicitation will be conducted consistent with the parameters that the phase 1 decision sets up, assuming that their settlement agreement is approved. When you go to the phase 2 process, it changes over from full litigation to notice and comment. Tri-State will put out a report with proposed portfolios of generators to meet its resource needs. And then, parties will have an opportunity to comment on those portfolios.
Thank you, Matt.
Terrific. Thanks, Rachel. Go ahead.
Yeah, Matt, I had similarly curious about the ERP. So you mentioned phase 1, this is a litigated process, and is litigation in this sense used in a different way? Because it's something they're regulated to do now. Can you explain just a little bit more who is litigating, who they settled with, and what you mean by litigation?
Yeah, so this would be administrative litigation. So it follows a very similar process to the complaint proceeding that LPEA had before the Colorado PUC. Tri-State files an application asking for approval. They attach their plan. Any intervener has an opportunity to file answer testimony and respond. Tri-State gets a rebuttal testimony to that, and then it goes to a hearing. However, because it's settled, the settlement now goes to a hearing. I would anticipate the Tri-State will be required to file settlement testimony. The ALJ may have particular questions about that settlement. So that's the meaning of litigation in this context. Interveners included select other cooperatives, Colorado Energy Office, Colorado Office of Utility Consumer Advocate, the PUC staff, and a variety of non-governmental organizations like Western Resource Advocates, Sierra Club, NRDC, and some IPPs, IPP trade associations as well.
Awesome, thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Other questions or comments for Matt that he could possibly answer in public? Okay, so appreciate that. You know, ongoing litigation, ongoing contract negotiations, very limited in what you can say publicly in these matters. So for people who are listening, I know this is frustrating. I know everybody's anxious to hear all the dirty details, but it's just the reality of the situation. So appreciate you navigating that, Matt. So we are gonna go into executive session the way we normally do. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Kohler and Matt, we have a couple items that we would like Kohler to participate in related that we don't think represents a material conflict for Kohler, and we'll have him do the early part. We'll cover those items first in executive session, and then Kohler will bow out for the piece that he is potentially conflicted out of. Do I have that right?
You do, and he will not be involved in any sort of litigation strategy conversations at all. He'll be excluded from those discussions.
Okay, and the objective just for the board is that we want Kohler to participate in as much as he can. So go ahead, Matt. Graham, sorry.
And then John, sorry, yeah, and I was just gonna say, we won't need to have Kohler come back in for the real estate issue that we amended the agenda to include this morning. And then when someone makes the motion to go into executive session, if anybody thinks they have a question about the confidential part of my attorney report, we could include that in the motion as well.
Okay, that's a lot of moving parts. Anybody want to step up to the plate and try to get that motion right in one try? Come on.
I move.
Tim Wheeler, take the floor.
I move we go into executive session to discuss litigation at FERC, the Colorado PUC litigation strategy at FERC, Colorado PUC. We also will discuss a real estate matter and any questions that need to be in executive session from the attorney's report.
Did you get that right?
I think so.
All right.
I'll second that.
There you go. Second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? No. Any abstained? Terrific. Before we sign off on this line, everyone, a quick note, make sure they have their executive session link. It looks like I had mine at everybody ready to go? Anybody need to talk? No, Holly, no, you're not ready to go?
I probably would like the link again, please. Thank you.
It was sent on January 7th.
Yeah.
January 7th, thank you.
Okay, if somebody can get her the link while she's looking for it, either way, that'd be great.
I'll resend it.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Any
Janelle.
last call for links? Okay, we'll see you on the other side. Okay, great. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So we have possible actions related to executive session. I think we have a motion to bring forward.
Yeah, Dan Huntington moves to switch line items in the capital purchase budgets in order to effect a purchase of property. Can we say that?
I think so, yep.
Or as discussed in the executive session. And authorize staff to initiate the contract to purchase.
I'll second that motion.
You good with that language, Graham?
It might, I thought we were maybe
execute.
gonna go with execute rather than initiate, if somebody is amend that.
Yeah, whatever we need to do.
That's fine.
Okay, you good with that, Graham?
Yes.
Let's get this right.
Mhm.
Okay, terrific. All in favor of the motion? Hold your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Wait, did Kirsten have some discussion in that, or were you raising
I
your
didn't
hand?
know if you needed that amended, Graham. That one
Uh,
amendment.
I think if Dan and Ted are willing to have it sort of summarily amended, we're gonna just have it amended.
Cool, thanks. I'm good.
I'm willing.
Great. Okay.
Sorry if I interrupted the vote.
No, we'll get it right. Let's get it right. Okay, so let's just do it. Any discussion? Great. All in favor, hold your hand up and say aye.
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 All opposed? All abstained? I'll hold my hand up. I abstain. Okay, motion passes. Okay, returning to the main agenda. Prior to the lunch break, we had completed all of the director reports, and we have a line item on, this is 9, Roman numeral 9C, miscellaneous reports. Are there any miscellaneous reports? Tim Wheeler, go ahead.
I don't have a miscellaneous report. I just had a question for Graham. You abstained, is that different than recusal?
Yes, so recusal would be to not participate in the discussion at all. So he's abstained from voting.
Okay.
So as you know, when we have Kohler recuse himself from certain tri-state litigation strategy discussions, he doesn't participate at all, let alone vote. So this is John participated in the discussion but didn't vote.
Perfect. Thanks for that explanation. Sorry, John.
It's good stuff. It doesn't happen that often. So, okay. So do we have a miscellaneous report? Joe, go ahead.
Sorry, just on the cow meeting, I have it starting at 8 a.m. Is that correct?
No, Janelle, it should be 9 a.m.
It was sent for 9 a.m. to 1 p.m.
Okay, sorry. Multiple calendars, thank you.
Time zones might be off.
Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, I just received a newsletter from Water Education Colorado. Bill Gates bets on big on Wyoming power industry. He's proposing a nuclear plant up in Wyoming to offset the coal mine up there. One of them, the Rocky Mountain Power, Naughton Coal Power Plant. So anyway, maybe some nuclear is going to be built. It's on the AP too. AP News.
Great. Thank you for that. Bob.
I was thinking about commenting, but I really don't. I have read that several times about Bill Gates, and these small, apparently really small nuke plants. People are thinking about some mix. Who knows? But I think we know there are going to be some gaps in the power grid as we transition. So if there's a safe way to do small nukes, maybe that's a good idea.
I mean, it's interesting tech, but it's I mean, it's a long road.
Yeah.
I don't really, right. Check with Jane Fonda, see if she's still up for a little nuclear work. Okay. Any other items before we adjourn? Nobody got that joke? Nobody? You guys are
Yeah,
all
the
too young.
China syndrome.
Okay. All right. Thank
It's
you.
like
Thank
China
you.
syndrome.
I'm like, all you youngsters don't really get the reference. I'm like, wow. Okay. All right. Well, last call for comments or items to discuss. Okay. Well, again, thank you for helping keep this meeting on track. I thought it was pretty smooth sailing, and you know, again, appreciate all the hard work the staff has done to get us this far on some pretty exciting upcoming items. So thank you again for all the hard work. We really are grateful for it. So, and with that, I'd like to go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Dan, what? Dan, go ahead.
I got a email from NRECA, and I will get our delegate approved. I need to go into their website and approve the delegate. So
yeah, thanks, Dan. And Janelle can walk you through any of that if we've got some questions on how to fill that form out.
I've got the website and login, so we're good.
Stan.
Terrific. Okay.
WUE, that Jessica, I was just assuming that was you guys. The WUE delegate, I was assuming that was you guys.
Those are, Janelle's already updated those. So everything you guys voted on with the WUE and CREA has already been updated and accepted by those two entities. And it's just, the NRECA is sort of a online thing. So
Thank you.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you very much again. And with that, the meeting is adjourned. We will see you guys at the COW.
Thanks, everybody.
Yep. Thank you.
Bye.